IB Nation, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by FanDuel. It is Wednesday. We are halfway through game week. And right now, Notre Dame is preparing to take on the Arkansas Razorbacks for the first time in program history Saturday afternoon when they travel down to Fayetteville for just their second road game of the season. This is a big one, Brian. Like we talked about yesterday, we walked through what's at stake and we previewed Arkansas big picture. Today, we're talking a little bit more granular, and we're diving into the matchup on Notre Dame's offense against Arkansas's defense. Then we're going to look at the flip side of the coin, talk Notre Dame defense versus Arkansas offense, which is really the matchup that I know a lot of people are keeping their eyes on for this weekend. But first, we are going to be talking about the Notre Dame offense versus Arkansas's defense. And this is a side of the ball, Brian, that we weren't expecting to have this much pressure put on them this early in the season. Really a month ago when we were talking about the expectations for this unit, it was, hey, get CJ comfortable, might have a performance or two where it shows and lets everybody know, hey, he's the guy. Rely on Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, and you have playmakers on the perimeter. But now that narrative has changed a little bit to where, hey, Notre Dame's offense is going to have to be ready to roll every single week.
It's funny, Trev. It was almost kind of like, hey, if you can just get to 24 to 27 every game, you're going to be fine. Now it's like if you scored 26 points in all three of your games, you're 0-3. I mean, it's just kind of wild. If you scored 27 in each of your games, you are 0-3 because that means you would have tied Miami at the end of the game and they would have won and gone in overtime and you didn't score. It's really hard to consider that, like, if they scored 30 points a game, they'd be 1-1 and another game would have to get decided in overtime. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about, Trev, that we thought that the defensive matchup was going to allow this offense to kind of take some time to grow up. And now we're sitting here going into this matchup saying, well, you boys better be ready to handle your business in a shootout because that's what this game is looking like. Now, hopefully it doesn't play out that way, Trev. Hopefully the defense figures some things out and gets back to playing Notre Dame football instead of whatever mess we saw the first 3 weeks. But look, the good news is that in this matchup you're an offense that is playing really good football, and I would say the last take your last 10 quarters of football offensively have been pretty good. I mean, even the Miami game, you scored 17 points in the second half of that game. You scored 33 offensive points against Texas A&M in a game where, honestly, if you would have gotten over a minute left, all you needed was a minute against A&M at the end of that game, and I think they go down and score. And then they just absolutely eviscerated Purdue last week. So the good news is this offense is playing at a high level. Hopefully they can continue building on that and playing that way. But what we've learned is, there's a lot of things we thought were going to be true about the Notre Dame defense that aren't true. But almost all of our hopes and wishes about this offense have come true. Almost. You've got a quarterback that's as good as we thought he was going to be, maybe better already. Your running back room is every bit as good as advertised. Your receiver room, in my opinion, is every bit as good as advertised, and they're not even using all of it yet. Your tight end, Eli Raritan, is good as advertised. We wanted to see them get the running backs more involved in the pass game. Check. With the exception of the offensive line, which we thought was going to be one of the 5 best in college football, this offense has been what we hoped it would be. And the offensive line, which is still, in my opinion, not playing to the level it needs to consistently, has steadily gotten better each week. And now this is going to be certainly a big test for them, literally and figuratively. But you go into this matchup, Trev, feeling good about this, saying, like, look, we're concerned about the Notre Dame defense against the Arkansas offense. Offense. Well, guess what? If you're an Arkansas fan and you have any semblance of like objectivity, you're also concerned about the matchup of your defense against the Notre Dame offense, based on what we've seen the last couple weeks. So that is the good news going into this game. And I know a lot of the focus and conversation is on the negatives, right? It's about the defense and this issue and that issue and play calling and not play calling, blaming the players, not blaming the players, all that different debate. And we are just not talking enough about how good this offense has really been in its last 2.5 games. And, that's a good place to be. Very good place to be when we talk about this matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about an offense that in their last 2 games, and I'm talking just offensive points, We're averaging 41 points per game right now. It's a pretty good spot to be in. And that, that's not counting for Jadarian's 100-yard kick return. So that's, it's a good spot to be in, especially when you're going up against a defense that just allowed 41 points and 32 points in their last two outings.
You just said it, Trev. Notre Dame in the last two games has scored 82 offensive points. They didn't play an entire fourth quarter. Actually, the starters came out at the end of the third quarter against Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
And you lost 2 possessions because of special teams touchdowns. So when I say 82, they didn't score 82 total points. In the last 2 weeks, Notre Dame has scored, would it be 96 points?
Yep.
They've scored 82 offensive points in the last 2.5 games, or last 2 games, despite not playing all the fourth quarter and some of the third, and then losing 2 whole possessions because of special teams touchdowns. That's against 2 Power 4 teams, including one that's ranked in the top 15.
Mm-hmm.
That is dominant football. They are certainly playing at a very high level coming into this game.
Yep, absolutely. And they're going to need all of it when they go and play the Arkansas defense. And when you look at this matchup overall, Brian, this is one where we're talking about it's, the strength of the Notre Dame offense versus the side of the football that's been kind of reeling for Arkansas. They look pretty good against Alabama, A&M, and Arkansas State. Then you play Ole Miss, you give up 41 points. You play Memphis on the road, and then you give up 32 points. And so this is a side of the ball very similar to what we talked about yesterday that's struggling and is going to kind of hold the key to victory for Arkansas. So if their defense can get a couple of stops. But big picture, Brian, this is the strength of the Notre Dame offense versus kind of the struggle of the Arkansas defense. And it's one that Notre Dame is going to have to take advantage of.
Yeah, you're gonna have. I mean, it's a lot to put on them, Trev. It's a lot to put on them. The burden of success for this team is offensively. You've got to score points. Well, welcome to the world of the Notre Dame defense. The last decade, basically, most years. You know what I mean? Like this is the burden that was on the defense last year, early in the season. Your offense scored 23 points in the opener. They scored 14 points in game 2. Second game was good. They scored only 28 points in game 4. If they were playing behind the same defense, if Notre Dame last year had the same defense that they had this year, they're 1-3 to start the season, 2-2 at best to start the season, because the offense wasn't carrying their weight. The defense had to step up and kind of carry the team. Gave up 13 points in the opener, 16 points in game 2, 7 points in game 3, 3 points in game 4. You gave up 24 points in game 5, but the other team needed 2, short fields to even get that 24. Then your next opponent had 7. Your next opponent had 7. Your next opponent had 13, 10. I mean, so the defense carried this team until the offense could figure it out last year. The offense has to do that now. I mean, you can complain about it and say, oh, it's not fair. That's fine, but that's the world we're living in right now. They're going to need the defense to carry them, or the offense to carry them until the defense figures it out. Like, look, I hope and think that they're eventually going to figure out how to be good on defense. Trev, you and I were talking before the show. I don't see there ever being a world where this defense is as good as it should have been. I mean, it would require major changes that I don't think Marcus Freeman is willing or even able to make, because you missed a whole month of preparing to be that defense. But you can certainly get a lot better. This offense just has to, guys, pick us up until we can figure this out. That's the burden that's on the Notre Dame offense. The good news is it's an incredibly talented Notre Dame offense that has the potential to go carry the day, but they're going to now have to do it, Trevor. But look, until the defense figures it out, you have to do for them what they've done for you in past years, which is, play well enough to keep you in games.
Well, that goes back to, good news is this is a unit that's been rolling right now. The other good news, Brian, and this is something that I know that you wanted to touch on as well, kind of before we dive into some of the more specifics of this matchup, is Notre Dame has some coaching experience going into this matchup. Mike Denbrock has faced Travis Williams before when he was at LSU in 2023. So this is a matchup where Notre Dame kind of, for what feels like the last couple of seasons, you have Mike Denbrock. He's the new offensive coordinator, first year at Notre Dame. Al Golden's going into his third year last year, but now you have a new defensive coordinator in Chris Ash this season. A lot of times coaching matchups don't necessarily favor Notre Dame. This is one where, hey, you can kind of lean on Mike Denbrock a little bit of, hey, You have experience against this defense, against this exact same defensive coordinator. You have experience coaching in the SEC from 2022 and 2023 with the Tigers. And this is one matchup that definitely will work in Notre Dame's favor. So, Brian, you pulled some of the numbers. Last time they faced each other, when Denbrock was at LSU, they put up 34 points, 509 total yards of offense, and averaged 8.8 yards per play. And ideally, that is something that Notre Dame can try to replicate against the same defensive coordinator.
Well, and you say, well, you don't have Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, and I'm like, no, they don't. But it's not like Malachi Fields, Jaden Greathouse, and Jordan Faison and Eli Raritan are Swiss cheese. And LSU in 2023 didn't have Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price either. And so but if you go back and actually watch that game, Trevor, Jaden wasn't cooking early in the game. I mean, he missed an easy throw early in the game. He had a corner route that the receiver had to go make a diving catch for early in the game. Like, he wasn't exactly like lighting the world on fire early in that game. He kind of started getting hot later in the game. So it's not even like you got, game where Jaden Daniels was vintage Jaden Daniels for 60 minutes and they had no choice. He was off that game. It was, and that's why the game was a little bit, closer than you thought. But Mike Denbrock also was part of a matchup, and here's where I think that the relevance is. Oh, and I'm going back and rewatching the game. His early pick was terrible, but he was in a similar situation to last year, to then that he is now, in that you got to win a shootout. I mean, you went into that game knowing you're going to have to score to win this football game. So he's been in this matchup. He's coached in Fayetteville. Now, he coached in Fayetteville in 2022, so it was before, I think, Sam Pittman took over as head. No, actually, Sam Pittman was still there. It's before this defensive staff took over, because their first year as a defensive staff was 2023. This is their third year together, and so, like, he's coached there. He can kind of help them. Hey, here's what it's like. Here's here's what you got to be prepared for, and all that kind of stuff. And then you go out there, and then it's time to execute and play. So I think those things can help them a little bit. You also have to say that they as a staff are familiar with Mike Denbrock's offense. Also, they went against it, but if they have the similar performance they did against Denbrock's offense this time, then Notre Dame's going to score a lot of points. Certainly score a lot of points. It's a different type of offense for Mike Denbrock, but a lot of stuff that he does is similar or the same. It's just there's a greater emphasis now with this team on running the football, where back then your run game was Jaden Daniels. I mean, primarily your run game was Jaden Daniels. That's not the case in 2025. So I think that's something that should give Notre Dame a bit of an edge, or not an edge, a bit of an advantage in this game, that they do have a coordinator that's familiar with that place, with that fan base, and with that defensive system.
Well, Brian, let's, outside of the offensive coordinator, outside of Mike Denbrock, let's talk about some other areas where Notre Dame has an advantage in this game. And I think it starts with the talent that they do have and what they've shown to have on the perimeter. You're talking about Malachi Fields and Jordan Faison, Eli Raritan at tight end, Jaden Greathouse, who they haven't fully gotten involved yet. But we saw flashes of what he's been able to do against Texas A&M. I'm talking this season. We've obviously seen flashes of Jaden Greathouse before. But this is an advantage that we believe falls in favor of Notre Dame between their receiving core and their pass catchers versus these Arkansas defensive backs, Brian. Yeah,
I mean, Arkansas, they're an interesting secondary, Trev, because we talked about it yesterday. They're a very big secondary. And there's certainly some size to that unit. But they're not they're good athletes, but they're not elite athletes. They're going to try to be long and physical and reroute and get hands-on. They're going to do a lot of different things coverage-wise. They'll go too high, single high. They'll play, cover two out of their too high. They'll play quarters. They'll roll to different coverages. They'll give you a lot of different looks in hopes of confusing you and causing you to make mistakes. And I especially think that we're going to see that against CJ Carr. I think one of the mistakes that Purdue made, and it may not have mattered, but one of the mistakes that Purdue made is they just kind of lined up, and this is kind of what we're doing. A couple of times they'd walk a guy down and bring him, but I mean, they just kind of lined up, and CJ Carr was able to get easy pre-snap reads and make easy, throws and pick them apart, shred them. I mean, he did what a talented quarterback does to a team that's not very good. He shredded them. I mean, if he would have thrown the ball 20 times in this game, he would have thrown for just 20 times, way over 300 yards. And it's actually, let me do the math on that real quick, Trev, because he had 223 yards on 10 attempts. So if he would have thrown the ball 30 times in this game, that's not accurate. Hold on a second. Here we go. All right, times times. There we go. He would have thrown for. Oh, okay. Hold on a second. Okay, give me 1 second because the math is not mathing for me right now. So he averaged 18.5 yards per attempt in this game, correct?
Yeah, if
So
it's
if he would have thrown the
223
ball
divided by 12, yeah.
Yeah, he would have thrown the ball 20 times, just 20 times. He would have thrown for 371.7 yards, so 372 yards in that game. They get just 20 attempts based on the rate that they were. It just kind of gives you a glimpse of what they're doing. And part of it is Purdue's not good, but A&M's good, and they had plenty of success against them. That's a better secondary than what they're going to face on Saturday.
Yeah.
And even when A&M was in good coverage, Will Lee had good coverage on Malachi Fields a couple times. It didn't matter. And they had issues with, just you got so many different guys you got to cover. It's like, okay, you want to start focusing on Raritan and this guy, and then we're going to hit Jaden Greathouse for a big play. And you want to focus on this guy, then we'll hit this guy for a big play. Oh, you want to do this? Fine. We'll hit our running backs on a wheel route out of the backfield for a touchdown. There's just so many weapons that I don't, and Trev, I know that you'll talk about this as well, but there's so many weapons on the perimeter and so many matchups that favor Notre Dame on the perimeter that you say, if the line can play well, then I think they're going to have success. But the thing that makes this team dangerous, Trev, is it's not just Fields, Faison, Greathouse, Pauling in the pass game. The tight end and running back matchups, I think, also favor Notre Dame in a big way.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, look, man, we're talking about a defense that, for their size and some athleticism, like I don't want to make it sound like they're a bunch of stiffs. I mean, we raved about Xavier Sori's athleticism yesterday, but lining up next to him is Steven Dix, who's like 6'1", 248 pounds.
It's not about Arkansas not having good athletes. It's about they just don't have the athletes that Notre Dame has. That's what it comes down to.
That, and compounded by the fact that they do play undisciplined on defense. I think that this is a game where we could see Jeremiah Love making a significant impact in the pass game. We're talking about somebody who, against Texas A&M, caught a one-handed wheel route for a touchdown, then ran over the safety into the end zone. That was a sweet play. But this is an Arkansas defense that gave up 4 receptions, for 40 yards against Ole Miss's running back. And with all due respect to the Ole Miss running back, he's not the athlete that Jeremiah Love is. That is a matchup that you have to take advantage of. Eli Raritan, he did his job as a blocking tight end against Purdue. But like we saw when they played 2 better opponents against Miami and Texas A&M, you had a tight end that went for 97 yards and 85 yards. These are matchups that when they're matched up on linebackers and safeties, for Eli Raritan, probably more safeties, especially considering they have a 6'4" safety. For Jeremiah Love, when he's matched up on a linebacker, Mike Denbrock's going to have to do a good job of designing up some plays to get him open. I mean, right now on FanDuel, Eli Raritan's over-under for receiving yards is set at 35.5. And I understand that that's coming off of, performance where he had 0 targets. He had 0 targets against Purdue. We're talking about a tight end, like I said, that had 97 receiving yards and 85 receiving yards respectively against Miami and Texas A&M. So those matchups, to your point, Brian, not just on the perimeter, but big picture, Notre Dame has that advantage. And I think that kind of just bleeds into the, second point. Athleticism and speed is very much in favor of Notre Dame in this one.
There's no excuses with Notre Dame this year when it comes to athleticism, despite what some people are going to say about the defense on either side of the ball. Athleticism is not this team's problem. Speed is not this team's problem. And that's something that gives you a chance every game to go big and have success. And so, I just it's a matchup that looks favorable. I mean, and that's going to be true for Notre Dame in every game they play this year, Trevor. I don't know that, looking at their schedule, I don't know that there's a team left on their schedule that you say, boy, I don't know if Notre Dame has the athletes to really go at that team the way that they went at, A&M or what. I mean, even Miami, they didn't lose that game because they didn't have the athletes. I mean, you and I pointed out plays where, like, this guy's open, that guy's open. It's just you didn't have time to throw the football. I mean, we're talking about the last drive of the game. They're dropping 8, and Jaden Greathouse still got open for what would have probably been a big play if he didn't get sacked. The issues has more been in the trenches, and that's also going to be a big question in this game as well, Trev.
Yeah, and really that's where you have to start with Notre Dame's offense. Can they still be dominant against a really, really big defensive line with some talent? I mean, we talked yesterday about, Cameron Ball and Ian Gefford. Those are both 320-plus guys. One of their edge rushers, I believe he's 6'6", 275.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I
And
mean,
they'll do some things where they'll kind of, odd stack it and kind of get something that looks like Purdue and A&M gave. But yeah, it's definitely a matchup, Trev, where this is you're facing. Well, well, let's just say it like this. Okay, they struggled against Miami's defensive line, and Miami so far has the biggest defensive line that Notre Dame has faced as a whole. I thought Notre Dame did a pretty good job of handling Texas A&M's ends. Notre Dame struggled against Texas A&M's interior guys, and they're big, and their size gave Notre Dame problems. Purdue's big, but they're not good. And that's the difference. They had good size up front, but they're just not good. And so the question that I have is, you're playing a defensive line that is going to be similar to what Texas A&M was. I don't think they're as good as, they don't have edge players that are like, there's no Cassius Howell, there's no Reuben Bain for Arkansas. That doesn't mean that they can't get after the quarterback if you don't play well. And if the Notre Dame offensive tackles play the same way against Arkansas they play against Miami, they're going to get pressures, and a decent amount of pressures. It just won't be quite as many as Miami because they don't have Reuben Bain and Akeem Messador. So, but the point is, Trev, is they are very big and physical up front, and that's where Notre Dame has to be careful that they're able to handle those players. Because, like you said, Quincy Rhodes is a good pass rusher. Philip Lee, kind of rotation guy, is a good pass rusher. Those guys bring some size. The other ends are, kind of like I said, a bigger guy, and the D tackles are bigger guys. They're more pluggers, but they'll bring some pressure off the edge. Your tackles have to play well, but I'm concerned more so in this instance about being able to run the ball against what is a big and physical defensive line, which is not something that Notre Dame has done this season. And honestly, haven't run the ball against a big and physical defensive line with some ability in a while. I mean, because you struggled to run the ball consistently against Georgia Tech last year that had a real big physical defensive line. You struggled to run the ball last year against Georgia, who had a big physical defensive line. You struggled to run the ball against Ohio State, who had a big physical defensive line. You struggled to run the ball against, consistently against Texas A&M. Now you got some big runs, but Jeremiah Love had to grind out tough yards. So those things are there. You look at it, Trev, and say, this is a bit of a show me game for the Notre Dame offensive line. When you talk about the matchup, they should be able to have a good battle against Arkansas. I think that Notre Dame's interior, especially with Gerby Lambert, Billy Schrouth, and Ashton Craig, has shown me that they should be able to have some success in this game. And they're going to have to kind of go out and prove it. But that's kind of where I'm at, Trev. Is I need to see this offensive line show that they can keep getting better, and hey, we can go up against a big physical SEC type defensive line and still do what we need to do. And if as Bill Walsh in the chat just said, Lambert's improving, I think it's a big part of it. Is Gerby is getting better each and every week, and if he can have a repeat performance, if him and Schrouth have a repeat performance as what they did on Saturday against Purdue, then I'm going to feel a lot better about it. From a run game standpoint. Now it's just about, okay, can Emil and Anthony Knapp protect the quarterback?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Operationally up front for Notre Dame, you're going to have to be clean. It's weird to think that your right guard is 6'7", 335 pounds, and he's about to go up against an interior defensive lineman that has 50 pounds on him. That's crazy. That is something wild to think. I mean, when you're as big as Gerby Lambert, I'm sure you don't encounter many interior defensive linemen that are bigger than you. So this one's going to be an interesting matchup. But look, I get a lot of questions, Brian, around, and I know that you do too. You get a lot of questions about, well, Notre Dame should be able to run the ball because Memphis ran the ball on them. Okay, well, let's not be quick to forget that the week before when they played Ole Miss, Arkansas's defense held Ole Miss's offense to 118 total rushing yards on 40 attempts. They averaged 3 yards a carry. One of the things that Memphis has that Notre Dame doesn't right now is a true dual threat quarterback. And a lot of the rushing yards that were gained on that day was from Memphis's quarterback. So it's not all going to look similar, but it's all the more reason as to why Notre Dame's offensive line has to play the way that they need to.
And also, when you look at the matchup, they had a quarterback that ran for over 100 yards. They did a lot of read stuff that put Arkansas in some binds that Notre Dame won't be able to put them in schematically. It's going to come down to, obviously, good design is important. You need to make sure you're not running into overloaded sides and you're having a way to account for the backside and things like that. I mean, so play calling is always important in everything you do. And anyone that tells you otherwise just doesn't know what they're talking about. But there also is a level of execution. And when you look at this Arkansas defense, they were good stopping the run the first 3 games. And against teams with a little bit more traditional offense. The Memphis game was the anomaly, and I think a lot of people's first time watching them was against Memphis. And so there's this thought of, well, man, if Memphis ran all over them, then we should be able to run all over them. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, Notre Dame should be able to run on anybody. Whether or not they will is a different conversation. And we've got to see that this unit can kind of go out there and perform at a high level, because, as I said, Trev, what we saw from Memphis was an anomaly. And the last 2 years, Arkansas has only given up 190 yards or more. Actually, let me go down even further. They've only given up more than 175 yards rushing 3 times. Memphis, Texas Tech in a bowl game, and late in the season against Missouri last year. I mean, they held Texas to 133 yards rushing. They held Ole Miss to 132. They held LSU to 158. They held A&M to 134. They held Auburn to 146. And all those teams, except for Auburn, were like 4.3 yards or less per carry last season. So this is a team that has shown that they can go out there and usually defend the run well. And the big part of that is their size. And that's why Notre Dame's offensive line is going to have to be ready for a test. I just think the people that think they're going to go out there and run all over them because Memphis did, that's a very different run game than what Notre Dame brings to the table, just schematically. And so you're not going to be able to just go repeat that game plan. And if you tried to repeat that game plan, it's not going to work, because Arkansas is going to be like, well, we don't care if your quarterback runs the football. We'll let him keep the football. We'll just make sure you don't hand the ball off to Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. Mike Denbrock's also a very smart football coach and not an idiot. That's why he's had the success that he's had. He's not going to try to repeat the Memphis run game. They're going to try to do what they do and then just find ways to take advantage of what they do. And that's going to require, you got to get outside a little bit, be able to laterally stretch these big boys a little bit. You're just not going to run duo and inside zone at them all game and run all over them. You're going to have to get those big boys on skates a little bit. It honestly reminds me a little bit of, not to the same degree, but you remember when, as a Broncos fan, the 1997 Super Bowl between the Packers and the Broncos, and the Denver Bronco offensive line didn't even average out 300 pounds. And Green Bay had Reggie White. They had Gilbert Brown, who was like 350 pounds. And the talk going into the game was, you're not going to be able to run on these big boys. Well, what Notre Dame or Denver do to them all game? They ran outside zone on them all day, got them big boys on skates. Just would toss outside zone to Terrell Davis, and then when they would then run downhill, he'd be able to get a body on double team that big boy and get a body on the body everywhere else, and then let Terrell Davis go cook the rest of the game. And so you've got to be able to mix it up in that instance. And so I think you need to see a little bit of that inside out, outside in combination in this game as well. And basically what that means is, like, the diversity you showed with your run game last week, let's see that again. Do that again, and you're going to be in a good position running the football wise. But this is the matchup that concerns me, Trevor, because we don't know if Notre Dame's offensive line can shine against this type of team, because they haven't done it this year. This kind of big, physical, decent athlete off defensive line, which is just like what Miami had and what Texas A&M had. So this is a chance to show, hey, no, we didn't get, because here's some of the things that people say, well, yeah, the offensive line looked better against a really bad Purdue team. Like, well, that's accurate. Like, I mean, Purdue's not very good, and they did look a lot better. But I think you and I argued in our film breakdown, this is also just them playing better, more physical, stepping vertically, getting more of a push, better timing on combo blocks and getting to the second level. Like, there was a improved fundamentals, improved technique. Well, now you're going to get punched in the face a little bit more than you did last week. You're going to be on the road. Can you still play that same kind of way? That's when you talk about matchups, that's the matchup that concerns me the most. But I'll say this on the flip side, Trev, if the Notre Dame offensive line plays well, they're going to score and score a lot in this game. They're going to move the ball, run game, throwing game, and Arkansas won't have any answers if the offensive line can play well.
In both phases, in run game and in pass protection. That is going to be so huge. I mean, couldn't agree more with what you said about the run game. Continued with diversity. It's going to sound like coach speak, but this is kind of why Marcus Freeman in the summer talked a lot about you can't just be results driven. You have to pay attention to how you got there. That's kind of how you have to look at the Purdue game. Because, yes, I understand Purdue sucks. And Notre Dame should have been able to put up 70 and hold them to 7 points. I understand that. But fundamentally, technically, we did a lot of breakdowns on it upon further review, which is currently on the message boards at irishbreakdown.com, Brian, where we talked about, hey, look at the pad level that Gerby's playing with. Look at the bend that Anthony Knapp is playing with. Look at the leg drive that Billy Schrauth is playing with. Those are the things that translate. Those are the things that you can say, hey, this nullifies the fact that, you're not going up against Purdue's defensive line. But if you play with the same fundamental technique, we've said it time and time again, it might not look the exact same, but with these running backs, you just got to get a body on a body, and they go. And that's what they need to do in the run game. But, when we talk about the players that need to shine, Brian, I know we're talking about the offensive line. Specifically, I'm going with the offensive tackles, man. I mean, these are two guys that they're going to be going up against some big edge rushers. Big edge rushers. I mean, Quincy Rhodes is 6'6", 275. Justice Boone is 6'4", 278. Phillip Lee is 6'4", 240 pounds. Those are kind of their main guys that they rotate in and out. And that's one that's just, I mean, I've watched Emil Wagner.
And Phillip Lee's kind of their pass rushing specialist. Like they bring him in to get after the quarterback.
Yes.
And he's pretty good at it, I think. He's pretty solid at it.
He is. Him and Quincy Rhodes are their two best. Quincy Rhodes right now leads the team in total pressures and I think in total sacks as well. So, the tackles are going to have to be up for the challenge in both phases of the game. I saw glimpses of Anthony Knapp kind of returning back to his run blocking form. That's going to have to continue because you're going up against a big end. And in pass protection, you're just going to have to do your job. I'm not expecting him to look like Joe Alt. I'm not expecting Emil Wagner to look like Joe Alt or Mike McGlinchey or Ronnie Stanley or any of the former great tackles. It's just do your job because right now you have a quarterback under center that's getting the ball out quickly and is a very accurate passer when he has time. You just got to do your job. It starts with the offensive line. I couldn't agree more, man. Could not agree more. When we look at some of the other players, Brian, because obviously the offensive line will have to do their job, but we've also been really high on the Notre Dame skilled talent so far this year. And sticking with the conversation of players that have to shine, you will have to have your guys go make plays on the perimeter. You're going to need your quarterback facilitating. You're going to need your running back duo to be what they have been the last couple games. In the last two games against Texas A&M and Purdue, Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love have combined for 446 total yards, not counting the 100-yard kick return and 10 total touchdowns. You're going to have that level of performance.
They're dudes. Like, what do we say, right? I mean, we'll talk even more about it tomorrow. Your dudes got to be dudes. But when you talk about players that got to shine in this game, it starts with your athlete. It does. Your studs. I mean, those are your best players. That's your best unit, right? And they got to play like that. For me, though, I think this matchup when it comes to players need to shine, right? That's what we're talking about. I think it starts up front. You talked about Anthony Knapp's got to keep getting back to what he was, he can do in the run game. That's important. We need the real Emil Wagner to stand up and play. But I think a guy that is going to be very important in this game, as far as somebody's got to step up besides Anthony Knapp. I think this is a big game where Ashton Craig's going to have a big impact in this game. There's going to be a lot of double teams up the middle. And him and Billy Schrauth especially are going to be working together. They need to perform well as a duo. But I think this is a game where Ashton Craig going up against Christian Ball, going against Ian
Ian Gefford.
Forget his Gefford. That's a 308. Christian Ball or Cameron Ball's 350 pounds, correct?
He's 300. He slimmed up a little bit. He's 323 pounds.
Yeah. Sure. I've seen him play this year. He's not 320, but let's just assume that that's accurate. That's your small guy up the middle by a lot. Even if he's the 340, 50 that I think he is, he's still 30 pounds lighter than your other interior guy. And their backup defensive interior guys are 315, 320. Like, they're big. This is a game where Ashton Craig is going to have to say, okay, I'm back. I've shook off the rust. He's been pretty good the last 2 games. Just he'll be a little inconsistent. He'll stop his feet on a rep and then not get where he needs to get to. But I think he's gotten better each week. As he's played more. This is a game where I think Ashton Craig could have a big impact for this offense, and especially the run game. I could see some cutbacks coming right off his butt and getting vertical, and he's getting real good movement and on the backside, and it's gonna, like, okay, yeah, this kid's really playing at a high level. I think that's important. And then on the perimeter, look, I feel like the way what you got to understand is teams do 2 things in preparation for a big game. Number one, they try to improve on areas where they struggle. Arkansas is going to know that Notre Dame, who likes to run the ball, is going to watch us get ran all over in the last game, and they're going to want to come and run the football. So they're going to have a game plan to stop the run, and they're going to be like, all right, this number 0, all right, we got to make sure this guy doesn't torch us. So I think some of those complementary players have to really step up on offense too, Trev. Eli Raridan is one, and Jaden Greathouse is another, where this is a game where last week it was not a Jaden Greathouse game last week. As much I know he's frustrated, and I'm frustrated for him, and we talked about how important it was to get him going, but I also didn't anticipate Purdue dropping 8 all game and basically covered up the middle of the field on the first couple levels whenever Notre Dame was in. And the reason that – so the first play of the game, well, they threw it over the middle of the first play of the game. Yeah, they were in 12 personnel, and they went with a 4-3 alignment and played more of a quarters defense, and they were able to get over top of them. Well, Jaden Greathouse isn't in the game in 12 personnel. When they're in 11 personnel, they take the D end out, put another safety on the field, drop 8 almost 90% of the time, and there's just not a lot of room to work over the middle, which is why C.J. Carr went 10 of 12, basically throwing the ball on the outside and over the top in this game. Well, I don't expect Arkansas to do that same type of system. I think they're going to focus on really crowding the box, making sure number 0 doesn't beat us, because he's been pretty good the last couple games. So I think we could see some bracketing of what like Purdue was doing. You want to know why Malachi didn't get a whole lot of throws after the first play, is because they were doing a lot of bracketing on to the boundary. So a lot of cover 2 bracketing to the boundary. I think we'll see that because Arkansas does that. They'll run cover 2. And I think we'll see some kind of, high-low bracketing of Malachi into the boundary. And then that's going to mean that Eli and Jaden Greathouse in this game should have a lot more opportunities to make plays in the pass game. And so I think those 2 guys are 2 guys that I look at and say, you talk about players needing to step up. Those are 2 guys that I think could have a big impact in this game for Notre Dame in this matchup. And then on top of that, Trevor, it goes at Arkansas in areas where they're not as strong. Number one, you talk about their lack of discipline. And I think you're very, very astute in that observation. They're not a super disciplined football team. They're not a team that necessarily plays a sound technique. They don't play with sound scheme all the time. They kind of flow a little bit. Well, their 2 starting inside linebackers, Steven Dix Jr. and Xavier Sori Jr., have given up 17 completions on 22 attempts for 202 yards so far this season. Like, that is Jaden Greathouse. That's your running backs. That's especially Eli Raridan. So I think those are areas, Trev, where I think this offense is gonna thrive. Yeah, you want to get Greathouse. I mean, yeah, you want to get Malachi going. Yeah, you need to get Levin Price going. But I think your complementary weapons are going to be important in this game. Faison obviously is part of that conversation as well. But I think Eli and this could be an Eli and Jaden Greathouse game based on what I think about Arkansas's defense. I think this could definitely be that type of game where they're guys that have to step up on top of, as I mentioned already, guys like Anthony Knapp and Ashton Craig.
Part of me also wonders too, and I'll end with this. we're talking a lot about complementary weapons. Is this the game that Ty Washington gets involved in the pass game? It'd be more of a
Whoa.
poetic story than it
I would
would,
love that, by the way.
but that'd be awesome. You know
It-
what I mean? Like it's the team that kind of, because of some, mental health issues and things going on, he didn't get the support that he needed. He comes back down to Fayetteville, and this is the game that he gets involved in the passing offense. I think that would be really cool. Cool story. And there's not a whole lot of film out on it.
I would love it. Absolutely freaking love it.
Yeah.
If Mike Denbrock came into this game and had some sort of like something dialed up for Ty Washington, like some kind of wheel route, some kind of, screen, something where he's like, yeah, we're gonna go at you. We're gonna go at you. We're gonna attack you, and we're gonna take advantage of what you do. So yeah, that'd be great. Some like screenplay, some kind of wheel route, some, you know what I mean? Like I would love that. That'd be awesome.
Some sort of like wheel route, play action throwback to the other side, like that play that, oh gosh, I forgot who the tight end was that caught it, but Ian Book did it against Stanford in 2018.
It was Alizé Mack. Yeah,
okay.
We're like rolled right, Alizé kind of delayed, fell down, and then ran the Yep. That'd be awesome. Be awesome.
That'd be really sweet.
You're blocking backside, you slip and fall.
Yeah.
And he sprints out and throws it back to you. Yeah, I could dig that.
That'd be sweet.
That. But it speaks to the point as well, Trevor. We're on the same page. You were talking about the complementary players in a game like this. Yeah, you need your dudes to be dudes. We say that all the time. That's always true. There's no game against a good opponent, and Arkansas is a good opponent. They're not an elite opponent, but they're a good opponent. There's no game against a good team where you're like, no, you don't need your dudes to be dudes. It's fine. You don't need Love or Price or Malachi to do anything. Like if Notre Dame wins this game and those three guys do nothing, it's not because Notre Dame won 13-10. It's because Raridan, Greathouse, Faison, Washington, maybe Aeneas getting some action. Maybe a KK Smith makes a big play. Maybe Micah Gilbert, steps up and makes a big play. You're going to need those guys to do those things. Yeah. If you're going to win a game look, let's be honest, Arkansas's defensive coaches are not stupid. They're gonna say what? 4, 24, and 0. Those are the three. You can't kick everybody out of the game unless you just dominate their offensive line. That's the only way you can really take. It's the only way you can really take an entire group of skill players out of the game is just dominate their offensive line. So they're going to try to do that, but they're going to know like we can't stop everybody. So we're going to make them beat us with Jaden Greathouse and Eli Raridan and Jordan Faison and Micah Gilbert. We're not going to let them beat us with Micah Gilbert and Malachi Fields and Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. We're just not. So they're going to try to shut down the run. They're going to I really think this is what we're going to see, a really like aggressive run stunts with bracketed coverage into the boundary. That's what I think if I'm Notre Dame, that's what I'm preparing for. Now, I actually think that can also, if you're smart, give you some advantages. I'm going to run some burst corner concepts again with a reduced look and get Malachi up against their safety and then occupy that corner with a little slide concept from, Jadarian Price or Jeremiah Love. And okay, how do you want to defend that? If you're going to jump underneath Malachi, then I'm throwing the little slide or swing route to Jeremiah and letting him get upfield. If you want to play that straight up, then you got to have your safety defending Malachi Fields. So it's not like that just means, well, guess we're not going to play Malachi this week. I'm just saying you're going to have to be smart about how you get him, backside digs and things like that. So I think there's certainly ways that you can still get Malachi the ball, but if they're basically bracketing him, somebody's one-on-one. And you got to find out who those guys are going to be, and you got to go at them. And those guys are going to have to step up. Greathouse, Raridan, Faison, and maybe guys like that. Maybe KK Smith, as I mentioned, comes off the bench and goes deep for a play, something like that. So get those guys going, Trev. Those complementary players are going to have to be major parts of this game. And we don't mention CJ Carr because I feel like in this instance, we'll talk about CJ tomorrow even more in the keys to victory. But it's more about everybody else does their job. I'm confident CJ will be able to do his. That's kind of where I'm at.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for part one of today's show. But don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to talk Notre Dame's defense versus Arkansas's offense. But before we get there, make sure you guys hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Make sure that you have that notification bell hit so you know whenever we go live. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, The best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, on part 2 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel. We're going to be talking some Notre Dame defense versus some
Real quick
Arkansas.
reminder, folks, make sure you get those mailbag questions in, because after we're done with the defensive section, we're going to do a mailbag. So go ahead and start getting those mailbag questions going in. But Trev, keep introducing us into this defensive breakdown, because this is the one that's clearly the message, as the chat has shown, this is the side of the ball that they've been wanting to talk about this entire game, which again is my frustration. It's like, guys, this is an elite offense that you're watching the last 2 weeks for Notre Dame. Like, let's enjoy that for 5 minutes before we start talking about the struggling defense, because we're, if you focus on the negative part, then you're missing something pretty impressive going on right now. Like, a buddy of mine asked me today, and I shouldn't say this publicly because I'll, don't want to jinx him, but he's like, who do you compare CJ Carr to? And I said, he's an athletic Jimmy Clausen with a stronger arm. Like, there you go. Smart, pinpoint accuracy. He's still young. He's still going to have some ups and downs, but let's enjoy that a little bit too. But of course, now that we're here in the defensive section, now we're in the part that everybody wants to talk about.
And this is going to be the matchup that's going to help dictate how this game goes at the end of the day, because we've watched games. We've watched a game already this year where the offense has played well enough to win, and unfortunately, the defense couldn't get it done in crucial moments. Now, I was thinking about this, before we dive into, the strengths and who does what well and the players that have to shine in this matchup, the parity's crazy, between last year and this year. It's just on a different side of the ball. Last year, we were talking, look, it's unrealistic. The defense can hold every team to 15 points. And this is a Notre Dame offense that can't throw the ball. What happened to Riley Leonard and yada, yada, yada. And as the weeks went on, they got better. I'm not naive to the fact that this Notre Dame defense could get better. I get frustrated because it's not what we thought that it was going to. And I'm not going to sit here and stake my claim that the Notre Dame defense is going to get back to looking what it looked like. But in a similar light to what we talked about last year with the offense, this defense doesn't have to get back to holding teams to 14, 15 points a game. I'm not going to be upset if that happens for obvious reasons. But the improvements that they have to make, in my eyes, are marginal. And it's one of those that I think that this game gives you the opportunity to show that, because you are going up against a quality opponent in Arkansas. It's not ones where you have to look too much in the lines. This offense for Arkansas is the real deal, folks. And they're 15th in the country in points per game. They're top 15 in the country in passing offense. They're top 20 in the country in rushing offense. It's a very balanced team with good talent that can hurt you. This is one that Notre Dame is going to have to be prepared for. So in a similar light, like we talked about the Notre Dame offense versus the Arkansas defense, this is kind of strength versus struggle here, and one that's going to be very indicative of how this matchup is going to turn out, Brian.
Oh, there's no question, Trev. I mean, just to kind of back up your point, I'm doing my stacking up articles. I already have the Notre Dame offense against the Arkansas defense. After the show, I'll finish my one about the Arkansas offense against the Notre Dame defense. But just to give you a glimpse into this, Arkansas ranks 15th in the country in scoring offense, 8th in total offense, 5th in yards per play. Notre Dame's defense ranks 118th in scoring defense, 101st in total defense, and 96th in yards per play. Arkansas is the number 2 team in the country in red zone offensive touchdown performance. They've scored touchdowns on 16 of 17 trips in the red zone. The only time they haven't, we saw at the end of the game last week when they fumbled the ball against Memphis. 16 out of 17, not red zone scores, Trevor. That's good enough. That ranks them 30th in the country. They are number 2 in the country in red zone touchdown offense, because of the fact they have some playmakers on the outside, but also you have a quarterback that can run and keep it. You also have 230 and a 240-pound running back. They're number 6, and Notre Dame's, by the way, is 94th in the country in red zone defense, and 83rd in the country in red zone touchdown defense. Arkansas is 6th in the country in third down offense. Notre Dame ranks 35th in the country in third down defense, which is one of their better their better categories. But that was also aided by this this most recent performance. But that they've been good on third down in stretches, but not in key moments. And that's something that they're going to have to improve on. But, I'll continue. Um, Arkansas ranks 4th in college football with the most plays of 30 yards or more, 15 already. Notre Dame ranks 40th in plays of 30 yards or more allowed this season. They've allowed 5 in 3 games. Pass game wise, Arkansas ranks 15th in yards per game, 13th in yards per attempt, 10th in yards per completion, 4th in touchdown passes, 16th in quarterback rating. Notre Dame in those categories ranks 132nd in yards allowed, 109th in yards allowed per attempt, 126th in completion, 105th in touchdowns, and they're 105th in efficiency rating. Keep in mind that Notre Dame was number 1 in college football the last 2 years in quarterback rating. And losing Xavier Watts is not the only reason or even remotely close to the primary reason that you went from number 1 in 2 years in a row in quarterback rating to number 105 through 3 games of the season. So there are clearly some things that you look at this matchup, Trevor, and say, this isn't a great matchup for Notre Dame. And based on what they've been so far. So look, Trev, it's real simple. If you're going to turn the corner, it's got to start now. It's got to start now. If you don't know by now, after what we've witnessed the first 3 weeks of the season, that this requires not small adjustments, let's clean up some footwork and coverage, let's clean up a couple things here, let's use our hands a little bit better here. No, this is a major problem that requires a quick overhaul. This isn't a tune-up, Trev. This is an engine rebuild, and you got to do it quickly. That's where we're at. It's like, I love movie references, right? This is like the scene in Midway where General or Admiral Nimitz goes into the admiral for the Yorktown, and he's like, I need her ready to go in 72 hours. Like, look, I don't care how you get it done, but you got to get her ready in 72 hours. And they got it done, right? And so that's, hey, I don't know how you're going to get it done, but this is why you get paid the big bucks. But the fact is you need to make the changes now, not minor shifts, not, well, if we just put Dallas Golden in the game, that's a step in the right direction. If we just put this guy in the game, Taylor Johnson in the game, that's a step in the right direction. Let's play maybe more Drake Bowen and Kingston together. That's a step in the right direction. But those are baby steps. This requires a philosophical change of who you have been so far through 3 games. If it's going to happen, it's got to happen now. If it doesn't happen now, this offense will rip you apart. Because not only do they have a big, talented offensive line, a talented quarterback, big physical backs, and a pretty talented receiving core, they have one of the best offensive minds in the game. And I'm just going to kind of add this little bit in here, Trev, that wasn't necessarily a breakdown. But the biggest matchup advantage that Arkansas has in this game is not Taylon Green or Omega Blake, it's Bobby Petrino against Chris Ash. And if you're Marcus Freeman and you allow that to be the matchup, that's on you. It needs to be Bobby Petrino against Marcus Freeman, Mike Mickens, Chris Ash, and then let's go. But you've got to make the changes now. If you make them, and we'll dive into this, Trev, there are some areas where Notre Dame can have some success if they play Notre Dame football. If you keep playing Chris Ash football, then this is just going to be like, well, this is another game where some receiver that no one's ever heard of goes off, and it's like, well, he's just a really good player. Yeah, he is. We told you that like 3 months ago. Apparently you didn't figure that out until game time. We were talking about Mario Craver in the summer. Apparently Notre Dame didn't get the memo. Chris Ash didn't get the memo. We might want to cover that guy. No, let's let him run free the whole game. Like that totally makes sense. So, they're going to have to make that change now. But that's the matchup that concerns me the most. You talk about diving in the matchup. You have one of the most creative offensive minds in the game against a guy running one of the dullest defenses I've ever seen in my life. And that concerns me quite a bit heading into this matchup.
Yeah, it's an absolutely heavy favorite to Arkansas on that one. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. There's no tomorrow for this Notre Dame defense. I'll stick with movie references. It's kind of like Rocky III. When he's training with Apollo Creed and he has to, every training session, Rocky's walking out of the gym. Just, do it tomorrow. And Apollo Creed's sitting there telling him there is no tomorrow. And that's honestly as fun as it is to talk movie references. And I know you and I could sit down and do that all day. it's the reality for this defense because there is no next game to see what you can continue to improve on. There's not. This is the game. You talked about the changes you were going to make going into Purdue, big picture schematically. We didn't see it. You made some personnel changes. Cool. This is an offense that will hurt you and hurt you bad, and an offensive coordinator that will hurt you and hurt you bad if you don't have that philosophical change on defense and what your identity is. This is going to be kind of a put up or shut up game for Notre Dame's defense. And you got to hope that they bring all the intensity that they need to the table, because this is one that they can't just solely rely on. Well, we have the more talented guys. You got to make sure that you put them in positions to win. And one of the things that you can do going into, I guess you could talk about what the spotlight of this matchup. Again, we're living along the trenches here, Brian. The matchup between the offensive and defensive line is concerning, and it's going to play a huge role into what success Notre Dame is going to have on defense, because similar to the offense, I do think that this kind of starts up front for them. Hey, Al Washington, hey, defensive lineman, you're the back end of your defense is struggling right now. You got to let them handle what they got to go handle and fix what they have to fix. You have to find a way to create negatives and get after the quarterback, because if you give Taylor Green time, it's going to rip you apart.
That is the big concern, Trev, is if your defensive line doesn't play well in this game, in all phases, you're going to have a hard time stopping them. And we talk about this a lot, but they have big old physical running backs. And if Notre Dame's linebackers are just kind of sitting back on the second level, waiting on the D-line to do something, and they're not being triggered, these running backs will run them over. And I don't mean run them over and like it's going to be embarrassing. I mean, they're going to be hitting them and falling forward for 2-3 yards. They're going to be hitting them, and then the pile gets pushed because the big old offensive line starts moving the pile 6-7 yards. I mean, you can't allow that to happen. Notre Dame's this notion about Notre Dame's undersized defensive line in the first 3 games has just driven me nuts, because it has nothing to do with size. And the one thing they've been good at is stopping the run up the middle. This is the game I'm concerned about their size. This is one of the few games I'll actually be concerned about their size, depending on how they're used. You have an athleticism advantage with certain players. Use it. Be faster, penetrate, attack. Use your linebackers to attack, because this is a big physical offensive line. It's not a super athletic offensive line. So use that to your advantage. And will they do that? That's the big question, because they haven't done that so far. And we need to see Chris Ashley. That what it comes down to, and I've tried to explain to somebody this. This is where you find this with a lot of guys that spend time in the NFL, is they become so scheme oriented that they forget that it's about you. It's about your players. It's about using your talent. It's about building around what makes them good. These aren't professional athletes. These are still college players. These are still guys that are being dispersed amongst 136 teams, not 32 teams. So you're going to have to say, look, what do they do well? How do we match up against them? All right, cool. I can't ask Donovan Heinisch to come off and 2-gap all game. Otherwise, it'll look like the first half against Miami. But you know what I can do? Use his speed. Use his leverage. Let him win off the line. Let him be athletic. I have another guy that can go toe-to-toe with these big boys. I have 2 guys. If Jared Dawson's healthy, you have 2 guys that can do that, because Jared Dawson's been very good being physical at the point of attack, because he does a great job using his leverage, and he's very strong. Gabriel Rubio's been a horse up the middle for Notre Dame this year. I mean, he's been very good defending the run. I thought Elijah Hughes played very well against Purdue. Now, this is a much better offensive line than what Purdue had. But and then to your point, I'm not even going to get into the pass rush, because the lack of pass rush is one of the most frustrating conversations I've gotten into. They can't rush the quarterback. How do you know? How do you know they can't rush the quarterback? I mean, we showed in the upon further review, Trev, there's a play where Boubacar has one of the nastiest pass rush moves you're going to see all year. Destroys the tackle. He doesn't come within 4 feet of the quarterback. Why? Because he catches a snap, takes a quick 3-step drop, and the ball's gone against an untouched, uncovered wide receiver. Well, when you're getting the ball out that quick, guess what? Isn't it funny that every time they kind of play aggressive coverage that the quarterbacks feel pressure from the defensive line? It's kind of weird how that works. When you don't just let clean runners come off the line and just get into their route super quickly, that all of a sudden the D-line knows how to rush the quarterback. Imagine that. But if the coverage structure changes, you're still going to have to make sure you're doing a better job. Use your hands better. Be more aggressive. Be physical with your counter moves. Get a push up the middle. Don't let Taylon Green step into the pocket. Be disciplined with your twists and stunts. They were very undisciplined with their twists and stunts last week, and that's what allowed Ryan Brown multiple times to take off and pick up big gains. Taylon Green's going to do the same thing. And I think chasing Ryan Brown around last week and Marcel Reed the week before is actually good prep for Taylon Green. So it's not like Notre Dame hasn't faced a mobile quarterback the last couple weeks. I think that should help them a little bit. But you're going to have to go out in this game, Trev, and say, hey, listen, we're going to have to be aggressive. We're going to have to take the fight to them. Number one, you got to allow them to do that. And if you do game plan for that, they've got to win those battles. That's a very important matchup to this game, is how well the D-line plays. I hope the D-line is hearing every single word about how bad they are from all the fans and apparently other analysts, and they take that to heart and play with some pissed offness on Saturday. Because they haven't been great. Don't get me wrong. They're not great right now, but they're playing better than people give them credit for. And I think people don't see them getting to the quarterback, and I don't think people understand this is why, and that's why we tried to point that out in the Upon Further Review breakdown that's on the premium board of, hey, guys, this isn't about this. This isn't about the deal. We don't know that the D-line can rush the quarterback or not, because of the way that they're implementing things. And you don't believe me? Marcus Freeman has said that. When he talks about we got to marry the front and the coverages, this is exactly what he's talking about. We can't play cover 3, zone, and rush 4, and we're bringing wide rushers and slow rushers. If we're going to bring 4, you got to be aggressive behind it. Play 2. Play an aggressive, rerouting quarters where you're, against quarters, you're riding the heck out of the slots. And that's what it really comes down to. And until they fix that, then the D-line's not my concern. But the D-line is my concern against the run, in that you've got to play like you have the last couple weeks. Got to play like you have the last couple weeks. And if they do, I think you've got a shot to make Arkansas one-dimensional. Because if you can make Arkansas one-dimensional, and then you get some good coaching adjustments from the Notre Dame staff, that's how you can force mistakes. Guys, Arkansas is going to get – if Notre Dame does all the adjustments that you and I wanted to make, Arkansas is still going to get yards. They're still going to complete some throws down the field. Taylon Green's still going to make some plays. This isn't going to be a 42-10 game, in my opinion. But you're going to force them into mistakes, missed throws when guys are open, interceptions, tackles for loss. Those are the kind of things, and we'll dive more into that tomorrow in the Keys to Victory. But if you get those changes, that will allow your defensive line to finally start to make an impact on the season in a way that I think they're capable of. What do you think, Trev?
No, I agree, man. I mean, it's the domino effect, because once you start to marry the coverage in the front, you're going to be able to get more pressure on the quarterback. As long as they stay more disciplined and play more aggressive, a lot of those things are going to happen organically. And that's what we need to start seeing from this Notre Dame defense. Brian, when we sit down and we talk about where Notre Dame might have some advantages, because I know the second we talk Notre Dame defense, the doom and gloom sets in, rightfully so, because this has not been the unit that we expected to see so far through 3 games. But there are areas of this matchup where Notre Dame does have advantages. Mind you, the big caveat is if they're allowed to use those advantages. But this isn't a case where Notre Dame is just physically outmatched and they're just have no hope of stopping Taylon Green and Omega Blake and Mike Washington. Brian, where we start, we look at this, and the Notre Dame run defense, for all of the flack the defensive side of the ball has been getting, has been relatively steady this season. And that's one thing when you go up against Taylon Green and Mike Washington and Braylon Russell, something that works out in your favor.
If it's a different type of matchup than what they've seen so far, run game wise, just size wise, but it's not better than what you've seen so far. Does that make sense, Trev?
Yep.
Le'Veon Moss and Reuben Owens. Le'Veon Moss has some size, but he's not Braylon Russell and Washington. It was Mike Washington, right? He's not them size wise. The offensive line is similar, but I would actually argue that Arkansas is a little bit more physical up front than A&M is. They're not as good, but they're more physical. I would argue that the quarterback is similar between what they've seen the last 2 weeks. And so when I look at it, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. It's a run game you can slow down, is the point I'm making. It's not a super talented run game. It's a run game that if you are sitting back and letting them take the fight to you, which is what we've seen too much, especially the linebacker level, then I think they can kind of get that thing rolling downhill on you a little bit. That's my concern. But if Notre Dame takes the fight to Arkansas, I think this is a run game they can shut down, Trev. And I think Taylor Green, and you look throughout his career, going even back to Boise, when he's quarterbacking a balanced offense, he's incredibly difficult to stop. But if you can force him to sit in the pocket and pick you apart all day, he'll make some plays, but you can also force him into some mistakes. If you get him working laterally out of the pocket, meaning he's not stepping up and taking off, but he's working laterally, he'll make some mistakes. He did that against Memphis. He steps out of the pocket and he's not even getting pressured. He just rolls out and just tries to float a ball down the field and doesn't see the safety undercutting the route and throws a pick. He's much better when he's on the move, when there's play action, when there's different things like that. He's much better in those situations. Bobby Petrino's pretty good in those situations, also dialing that stuff up for me. He's so good at moving the pocket and bootlegs and sprint outs and throwbacks and screens and stuff like that, that you can kind of protect the fact that Taylor Green's not necessarily a prototypical drop back passer. But when this offense gets rolling, it's because he's able to be protected by a downhill run game behind the big backs and the big offensive line. Notre Dame cannot allow that to get going on Saturday. And so, when you look at it, that has to continue, because if you can make this a game about speed, that plays into Notre Dame's hands. If you make this game about big on big, that plays into Arkansas's hands. And that's what's going to be. That's where I think this is a Chris Ash versus Bobby Petrino game. Because if you're Chris Ash, you have to be thinking, we got to attack this big old physical line. We can't just sit back and let them take the fight to us. If you think you can sit back and let them take the fight to you and be successful, you literally are in the wrong field. You need to find something else better to do with your career. Coaching is not for you. And at high school, coaching is not for you. You got to find something else to do. And I want to see this unit do that. And it kind of ties back to that. You talk about matchups, Trevor. We're still talking about the defensive line in the front seven, really the front six, the linebackers. But yeah, Arkansas is a team that runs the ball well. Notre Dame's been a pretty decent defense team so far. If that continues in this game, I like Notre Dame's ability to make enough stops to allow their offense to win this game. That's how I see it.
Oh, agreed. And it kind of mirrors and kind of bleeds into the second point of Notre Dame does have the athleticism and the speed to contain this Arkansas offense if they are allowed to be fast and play physical. That's the biggest key. When you go back and you dive into the all-22, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at what Tay Johnson did running from the far hash to the right corner of the end zone with length, athleticism, twitchiness. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to look and say, okay, that guy's got speed. Or to see what Madden Faramo did or what Dallas Golden did or Mark Zachary, even though on one play he got cooked pretty bad, he's still recovering, caught up to the receiver. This isn't a question about speed. And then obviously if Leonard Moore is good to go in this game, we know and have seen how fast he is.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to let your players loose in the run game and in the pass game. They have the ability. Just again, it's followed up with that concern of if they are allowed to play that style of football. It's a major concern.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely a major concern. Brian, we've talked some areas where Notre Dame has an advantage. But when you talk about areas of concern, you kind of start with their leading receiver.
Much longer part of the show.
It is. We've talked about the concerns up front. We've talked about the concerns with Bobby Petrino versus Chris Ash. But another one of them is very player specific, and it's wide receiver Omega Blake versus this Notre Dame secondary that just has flat out not been good this year. Blake is somebody who in the last 4 games he's played has had at least 5 catches for 60 yards in every game. going up against a Notre Dame secondary that is allowed at least 65 receiving yards in every game. They allowed 82 to Malachi Toney, 207 to Mario Craver, still hurts to say that out loud, then 66 and a touchdown to Nitro Tuggle as well. So this is one where they're going to have to do a good job of containing their best receiver and Taylon Green's go-to target. 24 receptions on the season, 19 of them have gone for first downs, and FanDuel's already replicated what we're talking about on paper because right now his over-under for receiving yards is set at 66.5. So it's not a secret what one of their better weapons is on the perimeter.
In the last 2 games, they've allowed 2 receivers in each game to be over 60 yards. Against A&M, not only did Mario Craver have over 200 yards, Casey Concepcion had over 80. And he was an overthrown go route from their own 3 from having a lot more because he was open. So to your point, Trey, you talk about concerns. It's, can they cover Omega Blake? Better than they covered Nitro Tuggle, better than they covered Michael Jackson II last week, better than they covered Casey Concepcion, better than they covered Malachi Toney. I'm not going to get into how they covered Mario Craver. They didn't cover Mario Craver. Can they cover Mario Craver? I don't know. I don't think they tried. Like, I can still go show you half his throws where there's nobody near him. So it's going to come down to scheme-wise, but then also your players and what help do you do? Because Omega Blake is he's not a future first-round draft pick of receiver, but Malachi Toney's 17 years old. Mario Craver's a guy that had over 300 yards last year in the SEC and is a good football player, but look, say whatever you want about him, but he's been over 100 yards in every game this year, but he only went over 200 once. Now it's against Notre Dame. He's at 122 and 114. His first 2 games. He's a heck of a player. Omega Blake is not Mario Craver. He's still pretty good. And you've got to find a way to keep him in check. Because if you can't, he's going to be the latest in a long line of receivers that are just like, okay, now's my chance. Like if you're a talented receiver and you're going to play Notre Dame, you're licking your chops. But to your point, he's gone 7 for 121, 5 for 64. He went 6 for 81 against Ole Miss and 6 for 60 against Memphis. Yeah, so you got to have a plan for him. You've got to have a plan for him in this game. Big time. That's a matchup that concerns me. And it shouldn't. If this defense was playing the way they're supposed to, it shouldn't be a matchup that we're concerned about. Christian Gray's gone against and shut down better players than Omega Blake. He's gone against and shut down better players than Mario Craver. But that's not who he is right now. And they got to figure out a way to get him back to that. But then also, if you get Leonard Moore back, that's great. But if not, you're going to need to figure out how to help Mark Zachary be better. So that's an area that certainly has concern. And then the other one, Trevor, is can they contain Taylon Green? That's a big question for me because they're going to use him. Bobby Petrino has learned how to use Taylon Green extremely well.
Yeah, we've watched mobile quarterbacks give Notre Dame's defense some fits. You look at the final box score against Purdue, and yes, I understand Brian Brown ended the game with 16 rushing yards, but they were undisciplined in their stunts. They allowed him to step up in the pocket, extend plays with his legs. And then with Marcel Reed, I believe he ended the game, 5 rushes for 37 yards, and they came at crucial times. One of his longer rushes went for a first down on their final touchdown game-winning drive.
Yeah.
In the crucial moments, because there will be crucial moments in this game, Notre Dame is going to have to find a way to contain Taylon Green. Stay disciplined in your pass rushing lanes. Don't spy him for the love of all things that are holy. Don't use Kingston Viliama-Asa to spy him. Use Kingston Viliama-Asa to get after the quarterback. Find ways to make him uncomfortable. Because containing him is 2 ways, Brian. Yes, it's with his legs, but it's also making sure that he doesn't go into what makes him an extremely good quarterback is running that balanced offense. And he's making plays with his legs and his arms. You got to find a way to pressure him, and you have to find ways to contain him as a runner. It's going to be a tall, tall task for Notre Dame's defense this week, especially with how they've played the first couple weeks.
Mm-hmm. If you can keep Taylon Green in the pocket, Trev, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow, but if you can keep Taylon Green in the pocket, you got a shot to be successful in this game. Mm-hmm. Really, at the end of the day, Trev, this is where it comes down to Bobby Petrino versus Chris Ash. It's because you also can't keep him in the pocket and not bring pressure. Like, you've got to find a way to affect him, but keep him in the pocket. And when he does leave, it's got to be outside, not vertical. Because where did Marcel Reed and Ryan Brown beat you when they ran? It was up and then out. Get him outside again. Now it's about the speed. He'll run for 5-6 yards, but you're going to tackle him. He's not going to go for 15 or 20 when he's working laterally against this team. So that matchup is going to be the big key. We get these, put these outlines together, but it just comes down to this, man. It's what's Chris Ash going to do? What's Chris Ash going to do, and what's Marcus Freeman going to allow him to do in this game? Or better way of saying it, what's Marcus Freeman going to dictate he do in this game? And I don't mean that Marcus Freeman's putting the game plan together. What I mean is, what are they going to do in regard to what's he going to dictate and say, hey, look, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to go at this team. We're not going to sit back and just play this soft zone coverage anymore. We're going to attack. We're going to be more physical within routes. We're going to do this. That's what I mean by dictate. Not like, okay, Chris, it's 3rd and 5. Here's what we need to bring here. But it's more so, hey, dude, this is what I want to see from you on Saturday. And I will be on the headset listening every time. And if I'm not liking what I'm hearing, then we're going to figure something else out. Don't make me do that. Like, I want you to do that. And then see what he does. See what he does.
That's a really good point. At the end of the day, we could talk X's and O's, and we could talk what players need to step up and what matchups are the most critical. But the biggest matchup of all is Bobby Petrino versus Chris Ash. I agree. Well, when we talk,
you know what lesson and I love this point that was brought up by Irishman 7114 in the chat, because we learned this from Al Golden, good and bad. In 22 and 24, Al Golden sat back and tried to cover against USC. And Caleb Williams ate him up in 2022. And then Jaden Maeve ate him up last year. What was the game plan in 2023? We're going to attack him. We're not going to let him sit in the pocket. We're also not going to give him vertical run lanes to get into. And Caleb had like one vertical run lane where he ran for a big play. Well, why did that happen? Because they got held. And then they called it back. So, I mean, that's a lesson Notre Dame should have learned from, again, Al Golden wasn't perfect. This isn't even about Al Golden. Should Marcus Freeman try to get Al Golden back? No, find a good defensive coordinator, because Clark Lee was that, Marcus Freeman was that, Mike Elko was that, Bob Diaco was that. It's about, look, you're playing an athletic quarterback. You're playing one of these offenses that likes to throw the ball down the field and run these routes and double moves. Don't give the quarterback time to read those things. Don't let him. Because as soon as you start getting a rush, you get your eyes down on the rush. You feel that rush. Everything in your head speeds up. Your mind speeds up. Your body speeds up. Your read speed up. Your throwing motion speeds up. And you make more mistakes. Just like Caleb Williams did against them in 2023. And we've seen that time and time again when you heat those guys up. Remember, early against Drake May in 2022, he was not performing well. Notre Dame was up like 38-17 in that game. And then they got a big lead and they backed off their coverage, and then Drake started making some big plays. But, you've got to be able to from a matchup standpoint, your offensive coordinator has got to do a better job of attacking. You've got to go at this guy. I mean, Caleb Williams threw 5 interceptions in 2023. 5. Passed for over 3,600 yards, 30 touchdowns. 3 of those interceptions were against Notre Dame. And it's because they attacked him all night. Didn't let him step into the pocket. Whenever he had to step out of the pocket. He had to go outside, and then they were able to pursue him and force him into mistakes. That's what we need to see in this game. Don't let him get comfortable in the pocket. And that's where I keep saying, like, we can talk about coverage against Omega Blake, and we can talk about the running backs and the O-line versus D-line and all that kind of stuff. And they're all important things, Trev. But it's going to come down to, if Bobby Petrino is eating up Chris Ash, it doesn't really matter what the Notre Dame players do, because they're going to be in bad spots.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Well, let's tie this up then, Brian. Let's talk about the players that do have to shine in this matchup. And I think where you start is, again, we're talking trenches. We're talking trenches here. One, we talked about why Chris Ash needs to shine. I agree 100%. But when you dive into the players up front, I think Boubacar Traore and Jordan Botelho are going to have to be dudes this game to get him uncomfortable in the fight, to contain him. Yes, I agree. Boubacar Traore and Jordan Botelho are two guys that need to have good games.
And it's not just about rushing the quarterback. It's also about being disciplined in your lanes and keeping him in the pocket. And then if you force, because if they're disciplined with their pass rush lanes and they don't win in the pass rush, when he steps out of the pocket, who's going to be chasing him? It's going to be Boubacar and Botelho and Burnham and Junior, but like the edge players. And you can throw Bryce Young into this conversation. You can throw Josh Burnham into this conversation. You can throw Junior into this conversation. The reason we're bringing up Botelho and Boubacar is because they're the two ones that they're playing the most, and they're the ones that they're putting in those situations to be that guy. They need to thrive. They also need to be good against the run. Knocking those tackles down into and the tight ends down into the line of scrimmage, being disciplined because they're going to run read zone. They're going to run some quarterback runs outside. You guys have to have good contain on the backside. So far, that's actually something they've done well. Botelho did a really nice job on that sack on Saturday. It wasn't like somebody forced that guy out of the pocket. He was out of the pocket off of a design play, and Botelho read it well and chased him and forced him to hang on to the ball. You got to do that all the time because you mess up on that once, it's 40 yards. And so they're going to be put in a lot of binds in this game, Trevor, pass rush wise, run game wise, and then just the quarterback movement game. They're going to be a big part of that. And if they play well, then Notre Dame's going to have a shot to slow this offense down. If they don't, then they're going to have their moments, but they're also going to rip off some big plays. And that's just kind of what you need to avoid. And then also, Trev, we talk about dudes being dudes. Your dudes at linebacker got to step up and be animals in this game.
Agreed. Drake Bone and Kingston Viliaasa have to play like their hair's on fire. One, the caveat that to everything that we've talked about is they have to be allowed to. Because if you let Arkansas take the fight to you, it's going to be a long day for the Notre Dame linebacking core, catching and tackling Mike Washington and Braylon Russell. Those are two running backs that are a load, man. But these two guys in both phases of the game have to play like what we've expected to see from them. And we've seen glimpses. But now it's time to put it all together. Notre Dame is now a quarter of the way through their season. And it's time for guys like Drake and time for guys like Kingston to play the way that hopefully they're allowed to and that we've expected to see, because this is a game where they're going to be, if the D-line handles business and do what they need to up front, they're going to have opportunities to tackle well in the box against two running backs that are really, really hard to bring down, that fall forward for a couple extra yards. We've seen Notre Dame struggle with that before. Against Miami, against another big physical offensive line, they struggled tackling in the box and getting a pushback. They were meeting at contact and then falling backwards. There's things that they're going to have to do and drive with their legs, play sound football, play assignment correct football. Your dudes got to go out and be dudes in this one. I couldn't agree more, Brian.
Everybody talks about the D-line and the corners. I got to admit, the linebackers have been the most disappointing unit for me so far this year. And I don't even really put it on them. I don't. You haven't used them. You haven't let them do what they do well. Yeah. And that's Drake, that's Kingston, that's all of them. And that's been maddening. That's been so incredibly frustrating that you're not letting those guys play their game. You're not letting Drake play a downhill violent game. You're not letting Kingston get after the quarterback. Kingston Viliaasa in 3 games so far only has 4 pass rushes. He has dropped in coverage 46 times, according to Pro Football Focus, while only rushing the quarterback 25 times. Like, no, that should not be the case. That should not be the case. And it's frustrating, in my opinion, that we continue to see that. It's like you're not using your weapons the way that you need to use your weapons. That's just been a big frustration of mine. And for context, last year Kingston dropped into cover or rushed the quarterback on 41% of the his pass plays. So like either he's in coverage or he's rushing the quarterback. He's doing one of those two things. He rushed the quarterback 41% of the time. This year it's 35% of the time. And you know, that's a big difference. And so it's just another example of just not using your weapons to be effective and to get after the quarterback. And it's just, I don't quite understand why that is. I really don't. I don't understand why they're. I mean, well, I do understand why. I do. It's just going back to the old adage, Trev, of we're going to do what I do, not what you do. To put it into context, if Kingston Viliamu-Asa has the same pressure versus combo breakdown that he had last year. Last year, he had 75 pass rushes and 109 coverage snaps. And like this year, let me just kind of going to do the math here real quick. But if you do the same exact number now, and you just multiply that, it's 184. That's over 10 fewer pass rushes on the season that he had last year on the same amount. It's over 10. That may not seem like a lot, but it kind of is. Because also, as we saw last year, as the season wore on, we saw Kingston more and more and more getting after the quarterback at a higher level than he did. Against Georgia, for example, Kingston had 13 pass rushes and 0 coverage snaps. Against Penn State, where he had 3 pressures, he had 8 pass rush snaps and 6 coverage snaps. So in the postseason, Kingston rushed the quarterback 28 times and dropped into coverage 18 times. Against Virginia, he rushed 9 times, dropped into coverage 4 times. So we saw a lot more of that, where against Northern Illinois, he rushed the quarterback 0 times and dropped into coverage 9 times. So yeah, you want to start using him more to get after the quarterback. That's absolutely what he should be doing. That's using him effectively. It's letting him attack downhill against the run. It's letting Drake get downhill against the run. Kingston Viliamu-Asa and Drake Bowen are 230, 240. If they have to sit there and wait on a 230, 240 guy to come at them, guess what? I wasn't great in physics in school, Trev, but I'm pretty sure that if 2 things of equal size and mass go at each other and one's stationary and one's moving, guess which one's going to win? It's the one that's moving. So you got to let them be dudes. You got to you have really talented, and you could throw Jaden Alsbury in here as well. I throw Madden Faramo in here as well. Let them hunt. Let them hunt.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, to your point, going back to the numbers, man, I mean, look, I think that these numbers would look even more lopsided if Kingston Viliamu-Asa didn't get hurt in the second half of the Army game and then miss the USC game and then miss the Indiana game. He absolutely would have had more pass rushing snaps if he played against USC. I 100% believe that. To your point about just the difference in pass rushing snaps. But yes, you have to go and play into the strengths of what your linebacking core is. You have a very fast, very physical linebacking room that is built to attack downhill, and you're asking them to drop into coverage and play zone. It just doesn't make any sense, which kind of bleeds into the last unit that has to shine. You know, when we talk about this matchup with Arkansas's offense, corners just have to play better. They have to be put in better positions to be successful, and then they as individuals have to play better. It's twofold.
100%, Trev. Is the cornerback issues 100% on Chris Ash? No. Are they being asked to cover too long? Yes. Are they not playing a scheme that plays to their strengths? Yes. When are they playing perfectly with what they're being asked to do? Not even close. Not even close. They got to play better. Leonard Moore did not play well in the opener. He played much better in game 2. Game 3, we'll see. Christian Gray played better against Purdue. Is that a byproduct of Purdue not being very good, or is he just more comfortable playing in the boundary? Is that the thing he needs to get his confidence back? I have no idea. We're going to find out if this is an improved Christian Gray, or just they played a bad team. We're going to find that out on Saturday, because they're going to go at Christian Gray, especially if Leonard Moore's back and he's back to the field. They're going to go at Christian Gray. Mark Zachary, when you're in the game, you got to play better. You got to play better. You got to play more consistently. As he gets more experience, he'll play better. In my opinion, I think we'll see that. But the Dallas Golden, Devontae Smith, the nickel has got to play a lot better. Got to play a lot better. And so those are things, Trev, that when you look at this matchup, we can talk about the front and the linebackers, but if they do their job and the secondaries doesn't play better, then there will be improvement still. There's no doubt that if the front four plays really well, and if the linebackers play really well, and the secondary is just kind of okay, there's no doubt in my mind that Notre Dame's defense is going to be a lot better than it's been. But that's not the same as being good or good enough. If they can play their game and the other side of the ball can perform, then that's where you say, okay, I think they're in a good place. They're going to be better. So they also have to step up their individual play as well. I would say Arkansas's got good receivers. They don't have A&M's receiving core. I would say just as talent-wise, I think they're closer to Purdue than they are Texas A&M, talent-wise.
Oh, absolutely.
Or Miami.
Yeah.
And that's not an insult, by the way. Trev and I think Purdue has a good receiving core.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we think Michael Jackson, who transferred from Georgia, and Nitro Tug, those are good football players. Not great football players, they're good football players.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Omega Blake is. He's a good football player. He's not an elite football player. He's not Marvin Harrison Jr. or Emeka Egbuka or Josh Downs or, I could, Jordan Addison. He's not, think about all the big-time receivers that Notre Dame has faced the last couple of years. He's not them.
Malachi
Fields. He's more Trey Wallace.
Yeah.
Than he is. And what did they do to those guys? He's not Garrett Surratt. He's not those players. He's a good football player. And if you don't play your game, he will eat you up. But he's not some of the elite players we've seen Notre Dame go against and shut down in recent seasons.
Well, that's what it comes down to. The secondary can't put guys like Omega Blake and C.J. Brown and guys like that they have in their receiving core to look like Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion and Malachi Toney. And if they don't get these things corrected and they're not put in better spots to win and they don't execute better when they are put in position, it's going to be all for naught. This is the unit, Brian, to your point, that they're going to have to show the biggest growth, I think, week over week, because everything that they're being asked to do and then some execution mistakes, it's just not what it should be. And that's the biggest issue with this defense. One of the biggest issues with this defense. I agree with you completely. Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it for part 2 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We are getting ready for a mailbag, so make sure that you get your questions in. Little MB for mailbag or mailbox emoji lets us know to set that aside. Make sure that you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, to wrap up today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel, we have a daily mailbag. So make sure that you guys get your questions or comments or concerns in. Put a little MB for mailbag or a little mailbox emoji that lets us know to set it aside. We do go for a limited amount of time. So if you want to make sure that you get your question or comment answered, you can always feel free to throw in a super chat, and those get bumped to the top. And if my memory serves me correctly, Brian, I think we have a couple of those ready to roll.
We do. We have a couple super chats. We have several super chats, including one from an Arkansas fan.
From Tessero87, welcome to the chat. Thank you for the super chat. Hog fan here. No turnovers, and you win. We'll beat ourselves if you just let us. Ride your stud running backs. We are laughable at tackling.
He's not wrong. The problem is Notre Dame's kind of been the same way this year. They'll beat themselves if you let them, whether it's turning the ball over on offense or big mistakes from the offensive line or dumb play calls or the defense, doing something dumb, not covering somebody. Notre Dame's kind of been the same way. Their tackling against Miami is pretty terrible. A&M, it was still not very good. It was a lot better against Purdue. That's one thing I know you talked about in the post. I think it was you talked about that in the post-game show, is the tackling. For all the issues with the defense, the tackling was certainly better in the game. And so that's a positive. But look, Notre Dame's going to have to do more than just not turn it over. I get where you're coming from. I think the general point about they'll beat themselves if you let them, that kind of goes into what we talked about, Trev, which is you have to put them in situations where they will beat themselves, which is keeping Taylor Green in the pocket, get him off, get him out of rhythm. Don't let him get comfortable sitting back there. Don't give him free run lanes. Don't let them get going downhill with their run game. Make sure you don't get blown. What's dumb about the coverage stuff that they do is teams are going to make big plays on you. Like Mark Zachary getting beat down the field, like that's not even in my top 5 of issues because those things will happen. The thing that bothers me is the 10 or 11 just easy free reign, no pressure, no rerouting, no closing the ball, curl routes, in routes, hitch routes, out cuts that they're completing with ease. Those bother me. Notre Dame actually gave up a decent amount of big plays last year. They gave up 3 big passing plays to Georgia last year. Georgia scored 10 points. Because that's about the only thing they did in the pass game was those 3 big pass plays. And so I don't care about Mark Zachary getting beat deep. That's going to happen. I care about all the other throws that you're just giving them easy access opportunities with their throwing game. That's what I care about. And I care about giving up big plays that are easy. Look, the touchdown pass that Ryan Brown threw, that was a heck of a ball. Hey, you know what? Sometimes you just gotta, hey, bro, nice play. You're on scholarship too. Like that's gonna happen. I don't care who you're playing against. That's gonna happen. Notre Dame gave up an 85-yard touchdown pass in Northern Illinois last year. Only gave up 16 points. Like I can live with those. You just can't let all the 10, 9, 10, 11, 12 just easy throws happen on top of that. That's the thing that's got to be fixed. Because if you let him do that, he will eat you alive. Because the thing is, he won't make bad mistakes. When like the 2 turnovers he had against Memphis were there because he made bad reads and the Memphis players were tight in coverage and they stepped in front of the ball. Notre Dame players aren't close enough in coverage to take advantage of those bad plays. And that's the problem. So he's correct in theory, but it's going to require Notre Dame to do a little bit more than just that.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, it goes back to the overall defensive philosophy. They're so scared of giving up the big play that they're willing to give up really anything south of 30 yards. And we talked about Notre Dame's third down efficiency, but look, man, at the end of the day, I saw a stat that popped up during the Purdue game. Notre Dame ranks 126 in the country on third downs of 3rd and 7 or longer. They allow like 46% of those to be converted. That's insane. But the reason why is because when it's 3rd and 7, you're dropping to 12 yards of depth because you're just afraid of getting beat for 90, I guess. It's just stuff like that just doesn't align. Just doesn't.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Trevor Rocket with a super chat. Appreciate you, Trev. Trev, Brian, I'm looking forward to Saturday's game on the road. 2 teams backs to the wall. Looking forward to watching the O-line take a step Saturday at noon. Hopefully some of the young guys on defense can take a step. Trial by fire.
I mean, look, as I said the other day, I don't want to hear excuses about people saying that Notre Dame gave up 30 points to Purdue because they played a bunch of young guys. I don't want to freaking hear that because Notre Dame played a bunch of young guys on defense last year. Mm-hmm. I just don't want to hear it. Notre Dame has 3 true sophomores starting on offense at quarterback, left tackle, and right guard. So I don't want to hear that. To Trev's point, though, the things that they've gone through are going to make them better if they handle it correctly and if the coaches handle it correctly. Mm-hmm. And like I even think like with Carson Hobbs, I think they handled it like he had a bad game against Miami and Texas A&M against Miami. They didn't bench him just because of what bad game. Then it was the second bad game. You're like, okay, this is a problem. So they even showed a little bit of patience with him. I don't think, well, how many more games do you need to see a guy just play awful football before you're like, he can't help us right now. We need to take a step back, coach him up and get him ready to go, down the road because we may need him again down the road. But you live with some of that early on because this guy's going to be good and he's going to be fine. And that's what you hope to see from Mark Zachary and what you hope to see from Dallas Golden and Tay Johnson, and hopefully eventually Jadon Blair needs to be on the field as well at some point in time. Madden Faremo at linebacker, like you just live with some of those mistakes but here's the difference. You were okay with it last year because you knew that, Don Schulers may come in like a heat-seeking missile and just completely be out of position and miss a tackle, but you could live with it because he was going to do all those other things so well, and he was going to go pick a pass off later to make up for it, or put his helmet on a running back's on the football and knock it out of a running back's hands against Georgia to get you the football. You could live with some of the things that Christian Gray was going to do because at some point in time he's going to step up and make a big 4th down stop or pick a pass off or have a big breakup. You could live with that from Leonard Moore. Leonard Moore made plenty of mistakes last year. Go back and watch the Georgia Tech game. Go watch the Louisville game. But he would bounce back from it, and he was given chances to bounce back from it. He'd go make a big play. He'd give up a long play, and then he'd come back and make a huge play. And like he got cooked a couple times against Louisville last year, but then he also had one of the plays of the game, chasing down the quarterback from behind, knocking the ball out. Like, when was the last time you saw a Notre Dame defensive player in 2025 like go for the ball? Like, it just isn't happening. So, yeah, that's just got to change, Trev. But back to your comment, I do think the first part of that's we talked about this yesterday, Trev. The fact that Notre Dame also is a team with their backs against the wall gives me some confidence that this team is going to show up ready to play on Saturday. Doesn't mean they're going to win, but it's not going to be we overlooked our opponent moment. Just because Arkansas has lost 2 games in a row, Notre Dame's not in a position they can overlook anybody. And I'll be shocked if the leadership of this football team, from a coaching level and a player level, allows this team to go into the game on Saturday thinking like, hey, we've arrived because we beat Purdue. They know their backs are against the wall, as well as knowing Arkansas's backs are against the wall. They know, guys, Arkansas is what's the spread from FanDuel, Trev? What's the line right now on FanDuel?
64 and a half on
what's
FanDuel.
What's the spread? How about the spread? What's that one?
It continues to go down. Notre Dame is favored now by 4.5 points. It's dropped by basically 2 since the.
So you're a 4.5 point underdog at home, which means if it was a neutral field game, it'd be what? What do they say? It's like 2 to 3 points. The home field gives you 2,
like a 3-point swing.
So like they think they're a touchdown better than you guys. That people think that this is what they're going to be saying to the Arkansas players. We're at home and we're the underdogs to a team with a losing record. That's disrespect. We're going to come out there and we're going to show people blah 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 blah. Right? Like, they're going to be hungry. The Notre Dame players need to match that, and I just have a hard time believing that they're not going to match that. They're 1-2. I highly doubt that the Notre Dame players are reading their press clippings after beating Purdue. And I'm pretty confident the Notre Dame players aren't thinking that on defense aren't thinking like, hey, we arrived because we held Purdue to 30. I don't think that. I do think this is going to be a team that shows up hungry and ready to play. Whether or not they'll execute, and more importantly, be put in a position to execute at a high level, that remains to be seen. But I do think we're going to get a Notre Dame football team that's going to play like their backs are against the wall. And this team under Marcus Freeman has shown when their backs are against the wall, they don't play panicky. They don't press. They don't because you could also do it where your backs are against the wall and you panic, you make mistakes. Notre Dame hasn't done that under Marcus Freeman. So that's a good sign.
Agreed. Yeah, we see that the same. Super chat from Wade Garrett. Thank you, Wade. Hey, guys. I've heard both of you talk about how the offensive line catches when you both don't seem to love. Can you explain what that means to me? Appreciate you both, and go Irish.
Wade, I would encourage you to go watch some of the videos from the A&M and Miami game, especially the A&M game. We talked about that and showed that. But essentially, I'll try to describe it best I can without film. Essentially, the job of each line, offensive and defensive, is to reset the line of scrimmage in your favor. So the line of scrimmage, whether you're looking at the ball or whether you count it as like where the offensive line is, people will view it differently. Not like the legal definition, but in the sense of what we're talking about. You need to reset it in your favor. So if the offensive line is here and they're going that way, you want to, at the snap, you want to reset the line of scrimmage here. So you want to step properly, then step to contact, deliver punishment to contact, and then drive your feet, push them off the ball. Catching is essentially what you do is you kind of pick your feet up and you step, and then you let the defense come to you. And that's what catching means. And you see that in tackling. So, for example, if a linebacker is standing in the hole and the running back's running at him and he just stands there and lets the guy come to him and then just wraps him up and he's caught the guy and just take him to the ground that way. That, as opposed to stepping into the hole and then delivering punishment. Similar concept here. It's, are you stepping off the line? Are you getting push? Are you getting movement? Are you resetting the line of scrimmage in your favor? And that's what the offensive line has not done a great job of this year. It got better against Purdue. It's going to be tougher to do that against Arkansas than it is Purdue, but it's going to need to be something they do. So that's what catching means. It's basically you're absorbing the contact instead of delivering the contact.
Super chat from Corey Ruth. Thank you for the super chat. How much will increased blitzes on third down help? I mean, I would say pretty significantly, but Corey, I'll do you one better. I just don't think it should be just limited to third down. You know, we've watched Notre Dame's defense dial up pressures on first, second, or third down to get quarterbacks uncomfortable in seasons past.
Yeah.
And that's just something that they've just refused. And it's not haven't tried, it's they've refused to do it. When you watch something be successful, like sending additional pressure more than 4 against A&M, against Miami, and against Purdue, but you wait to do it until the third half, when you see that it has a success rate and you still don't go to it earlier in games, that's a refusal to do it. That's not I don't know if it's going to work. That's what's frustrating. So yes, Corey, to answer your question, simply put, I absolutely think that it would help on third down. I just also think it would help big picture. Because then if you're able to get more pressure, you're not putting your defense in a spot where it's 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. You're putting them into a situation where it's potentially 3rd and 10 or longer, 3rd and 9 or longer. So I would love to see more increased blitzes earlier, but yes, short answer, it would absolutely help on third down.
I agree, Corey. I think looking at it from the standpoint of a quarterback, it's got to be effective pressures. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So like just blitzing for the sake of blitzing doesn't do anything. They've got to be smart, effective pressures. What I loved about the blitz that they brought on Saturday that hit home is they had a hard slant across and then looped 2 linebackers, Jaden Osbury and Jalen Sneed, around. And then, of course, you had a really nice edge crash by Bryce Young. You occupied the interior blockers because of the hard slants. It occupied 2 slanters, occupied 3 blockers. And then you allowed your fast linebackers to fly off the ball. And you saw it. Like Ryan Brown started reacting to the pressure before it got to him. I mean, he saw guys flying around, and this is what I was pointing to last week is as soon as he saw the 2 linebackers flying around, he panicked and was like, oh, shoot, where do I go with the ball? And looked like he hadn't looked all game. So that's got to be, I mean, just bringing 5 where it's like just a basic 4-man rush and then you slam the Mike linebacker into the guard, that's not a blitz. That's a stunt. That's dumb. That's not going to work. Arkansas has a couple really nice linebacker blitz packages, Trev, where they'll slant hard and then just because they got linebackers can run too, and then they'll bring those guys on like little, wide twists and they get downhill in a hurry. And they have success with that. So I want to see Notre Dame implement, similar to what we saw last year. Like, gosh, I mean, we saw first practice of this year, Trev. You were at the first practice of the year, correct? Or I know who was it? Vince wasn't there. There was one particular blitz that we saw multiple times that day. I haven't seen it once in 3 games. You're like, why were you more aggressive in practice 1 with no pads on than you against your own defense and you have been against the teams that you're playing on Saturday? That's the frustrating part. So, Corey, I think what they can do is if they're sound and they're aggressive, then you're going to increase your effectiveness for 2 reasons. One is obviously sacks are going to stop drives. But number 2, as like when you speed up the mental process of the quarterback, he's going to rush his mind. He's going to rush his body. And that will lead to times when he may miss a guy that's open. Or now it's like, Carson Beck's dropping back on 3rd down and 7, 3rd down and 8. It's no problem because nobody's near him. He can wait. He can just deliver an accurate pass, and then you're good to go. They're part of the reason that Marcel Reed had some misses again in the 3rd quarter was because they were bringing some pressure, and he just kind of panicked or rushed. I say panicked, rushed. Panic might not be the right word all the time. It's more rush. You speed things up, and when you speed things up, that's when quarterbacks make mistakes. I'm saying that as a quarterback, you're just more likely and more prone to make mistakes. And that's why I think it's effective, because it doesn't always have to hit home to be effective. Good question, Corey.
Christopher Hardy, appreciate the super chat. Wanted to share the news with my IB fam. While I might not have gotten a contract with Chicago Lyric Opera earlier this year, yesterday I got offered a contract to play Blackbeard for Dollywood satellite site in Panama City, Florida. That's awesome.
That's awesome, Christopher. Congratulations, man. I have a feeling this is what your email to me was about, because I saw an email from you last night. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I saw that it was long. So man, I appreciate that. That you let me know that if that's what the email is about. But congratulations, man. That is absolutely awesome. Weather, very soon, the weather in Panama City is going to be a lot better than the weather in Chicago. Just saying. So just keep that good news in mind, my friend. But congratulations, buddy.
Andrew Burke, thank you for the super chat. What's your take on Chris Ash not being available for the last 3 weeks of player press conferences on Tuesday? Seems to be making it worse by ducking.
I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, yeah. I mean, but do they send the coordinators out every week? Trev, you do
No,
those.
I mean,
Has
this
Mike
was the
Denbrock
first.
been out there every week?
This was the first time Mike Denbrock has talked since like the opening press conference. I think of opening week, maybe. Yeah. That was the last time we heard Denbrock talk, and then since then it's just been one coach. I mean, because to be fair, in these player press conferences, I still don't think we've heard from Joe Rudolph. Like I'm talking player.
Hold on, they only send one assistant. Period.
Yeah, it's the last couple. It's been 4 players and an assistant coach. I think this
last year
time
they would always send 2 assistant coaches.
Yep, one on offense, one on defense.
That's lame.
Yeah,
I figured. Just another example of them just, whatever. I'm not even gonna get into it right now, but to your point, I just think like when you're playing this bad, the defensive coordinator should have to step up and answer questions. I'm sorry, he just should. But I don't think it's ducking because to your point, Al Golden didn't speak every week last year. He didn't talk after every game last year. So that's fine. But also I want Chris Ash spending every possible waking second trying to figure out how to stop the next opponent. But it is a bit of a bad look when you don't make him available.
Yeah.
But I guess they're thinking we've got 13, 14 weeks of the season, and so we'll send one coach out every week and just whatever.
Super chat from Beezer12 Washington Beer. Appreciate you, Bees. This weekend is filled with good games. My sister had the audacity to have her wedding on Saturday. My wedding was on a Notre Dame bye week. She needs to get with the program. Which games are you most excited to see?
Yeah, that's we'd have to have a serious conversation about, hey man, look, I love you, you're my sister, your family, but not sure I can make it this weekend. To his point, Trev, I think there's a lot of good games this weekend. I do. Obviously, LSU at Ole Miss is going to be a good game. There's some weird storylines about that one. Oregon, Penn State is going to be a big game. And then I think the biggest game of the weekend, in my opinion, I know a lot of people say Oregon, Penn State. But I think the biggest game of the weekend is Alabama, Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's going to be a huge game. Huge game. Indiana at Iowa. It's going to be very interesting, in my opinion. But here's a game to keep an eye on. Ohio State at Washington. I can't believe Washington's not ranked right now. I mean, they're 3-0. They blew out Washington State last week. If we're just ranking teams based on what we've seen this season, I got to think Washington's deserves to be ranked more than Notre Dame does, for example. So I think that's going to be an interesting game. Washington has not lost at home since, what was it, 2022?
Yeah,
I think the last time Washington lost at home.
It's crazy.
So is it 22 or 23? Because it has to be 22 because in 2023 they played for the title and didn't lose a home game that year. Their only loss that year was the title game, wasn't it? What was their? Yeah, the only game they lost in 2023 was the title game. So the last time they lost at home, actually it's longer than that, Trev. They haven't lost at home since they lost to Washington State at the end of the 2021 season, when that was Jimmy Lake's last year. So 22, 23, 24, they haven't lost at home in those 3 years. They've beaten some good teams as well. I mean, in 2022, they beat Michigan State at home. They beat a pretty decent Arizona State team at home. Arizona team at home, excuse me. They beat a ranked Oregon State team at home. That's when Jonathan Smith was still there. And then in 2023, they beat Oregon at home. Oregon was ranked 6th. They beat a good Utah team at home. Utah that year was an 8-win football team. And then they beat Washington State at home. That was a Cam Ward-led Washington State team. And then, of course, last year they beat USC at home. They beat Michigan at home. And beat the almighty Wildcats from Northwestern at home. So they've had some good wins at home. This is obviously going to be a different animal. But that's another game that I'm looking forward to. And we'll preview and break a lot of these games down tomorrow. TCU at Arizona State is a Friday night game I'm very much looking forward to. We're going to find out how good the Florida State defense is Friday night as well. Look, they're going to score a lot of points on Virginia. My question is, can they stop Virginia? Because one thing Virginia's done so far with Chandler Morris is they can move the ball and score. They can't stop anybody. The only game that they lost this year, Trev, they scored 31 points in that game. So I expect Florida State to win convincingly, but is it 50-10 or is it 50-24, 50-27? That's more of what I'm curious to see on Friday night. And it's in Charlottesville, which is going to be intriguing as well. So those are just some of the games that I'll have my eye on. The USC-Illinois game became a lot less interesting now. I still am shocked by that. We both picked Indiana to win. We picked Indiana to win, I think, by like what I had them by 3. You had them by a touchdown, I think.
I had them winning 31-20.
So 11. And you said it'd be like they'd score late to put it away. I did not see a 7+ touchdown advantage. Now, part of that is obviously Kurt Cignetti runs the score up, but I don't care. It would have been 49-10 if he didn't run the score up. Like, that was a beat down. I did not see that coming. We'll preview a lot of those games tomorrow. Talk about a lot of those games tomorrow. Upset alert. I got a team on upset alert, Trev. It's the Volunteers heading to Starkville.
Yeah.
Are you smirking because you're going to talk about that game tonight or tomorrow night on the spread option?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
As soon as you start smirking, I was like, oh, I think I know where he's going with that one.
There are a couple games that I'm interested to see. They're not as high octane as the ones that Brian brought up, but it's more for, how do some teams bounce back? I am interested in the USC-Illinois game, not for the Illinois impact, but USC did not do a good job traveling east last season.
That's a good point.
And
you could argue they haven't done a good job this year either, Trev, because they weren't exactly lighting the world on fire offensively when they had to play at Purdue.
Nope. So I'm going to be very interested to see, hey, has Lincoln Riley figured out a schedule out there to get his team to perform when they have to travel thousands of miles? So that's going to be something I'll be keeping my eye on. And then another one that I'm not putting too much weight into it. It's an unranked matchup, but Duke at Syracuse. How is Syracuse going to bounce back from losing Steve Angeli? What is Ricky Collins going to look like? And then Duke has just been one of those teams where it's just been so weird to – Duke has been a weird team to follow this year, very similar to how they were last year. Those are some of the ones that I'm keeping my eye out on. Outside of that, Auburn plays on the road at Texas A&M. This is going to be our first chance to see Texas A&M in action since they beat Notre Dame. And so I'm hoping that they kind of follow it up with a good performance against a good offense. And that's going to be interesting to watch.
I feel a lot better about A&M winning this game because they had the bye. I think A&M would have been very mentally drained, physically drained, and feeling good about themselves. This gives Mike Elko a week of bringing them back down and reminding them of the Notre Dame game doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. If we go out and don't win the SEC, it doesn't matter that we beat Notre Dame. Our goal is to win the SEC.
Yep.
And I think last year's Auburn game, they're going to have a little bit of – I think Auburn beating them last year is going to help A&M be ready for this game because they got a little payback against Auburn as well. They used that as motivation for Notre Dame game. Notre Dame beat them last year. So did Auburn.
Super chat from Beefeater ND08. Thank you for the super chat. Is there anyone on the defense, potentially Drake Bowen, you would trust to override Ash's call and call plays situationally they know will work?
No. You have – look – You have to go with what's called unless you are given the authority to make changes. You can't do that. It's not right. You're also then putting your teammates in a situation where they got to decide, well, man, I know it's great in movies, like it was Cool and Rudy, when they no, we got to put this. I'm like, is there no play clock back then? Like, well, like this is a long dialogue between plays, man. Like, like that's cool in movies and everything, but that doesn't happen in real football. It can't happen in real football. If you've done that, you've lost your team.
Yeah.
Like you've completely lost your team. And if I was Marcus Freeman and I found out somebody's doing that, we're going to have a problem.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You do what's called, and then you do what's called as best as you can. And that's the reality. Now, and if it doesn't work, then you as a captain go to the head coach afterwards with the other captains, say, Coach, you go into his office with the Don Schuler, with Donovan Heinisch, and with some of your other Leonard Moore, and you say, Coach, look, man, this isn't working. We don't feel like we're being allowed to play our game. And you have that conversation. And if he doesn't listen to you, that's on the head football coach.
Yeah.
That's on him. But then if he doesn't listen to you, then you go out that next week and you still do what you're told to do and do it as best you can. Like you can't do that. That's not leadership. And I'd be sympathetic to their desire to want to do that. I did that in high school, and I undermined my coach, and he didn't like it, and it created division on the team. And and I was wrong. Now I was right because both plays worked and went for touchdowns, but it doesn't matter. If a player did that to me when I became a coach, we'd have a problem if it was something he wasn't authorized to do. Now, if the linebacker's given the ability to make checks based on things he sees, then that's perfectly fine. If Drake has been given the authority that if they do this, you're allowed to check into something else, then let him do that. It's no different than a quarterback making audibles. But that's not overriding calls and call plays to things will work. That's you going within the structure to say, hey, if you see this, you're allowed to check into something different. That's okay. And Drake would be the guy to do that. Not just because he's a captain, but he's the middle linebacker and he's a smart football player. So overall, you just can't do that. It's tempting. You can't do that. Any pushback on that, Trev? Or you agree?
No, I agree completely. I'm just frustrated that we're to the point where we have to ask this question. And I'm not mad at you, Beef. I'm not in the slightest.
Yeah.
It's just really frustrating that we're at the point 3 games into the season that we have to talk about players needing to override a defensive coordinator's play calls after watching it for 3 games. That's just really disheartening. But no, Brian, you and I are completely on the same page on that one. Super chat from Bees of 12 Washingbeard. Thank you for another one, Bees. Any validity to Ash not calling the second half?
I don't think so. I don't. Because if he wasn't calling the second half, then he also wouldn't have called the final drive of the second quarter. Are you telling me that – now, maybe it happened, but are you telling me that Marcus Freeman didn't make a change during that 2-hour rain delay, but he did in the 3-minute break between the second quarter and third quarter? You guys realize halftime this year was a commercial break. And the halftime was the break. They technically their halftime break. What did they say, Trev? It was 5 minutes, and then they didn't leave the field. They stayed on the field.
3-minute.
Yeah, it was
just a standard 3-minute commercial break.
So Freeman didn't make a change the first 2 quarters where it was garbage, but then that final play was the final straw, and then he changed in that next commercial break, changed it over. I just have a hard time believing that. Now, that doesn't mean that Chris Ash wasn't kind of told what to do after that. I mean, that could have happened during the commercial break. Listen, man, we freaking talked about this all halftime in last game. Stop playing this chicken football. Go at them. But let's also not forget they were helped by the offense in the second half as well. The Purdue offense. First drive of the third quarter. Same thing. Easy turnaround, easy curl route, as easy as can be. And then Purdue decides, hey, we're throwing all over them. They're never going to expect a run play now. They're definitely not going to expect 2 straight run plays right now. They ran a toss to Devin Mockabee. What? And then they're in 3rd and 5, and they throw a pass. Guy's wide open, and he drops the ball. So how was the play calling in the second half any better? It wasn't until the next series, and by then it was 49-23. Then it's well, okay, let's go at them. So maybe it was different, but I just have a hard time believing that Marcus Freeman didn't see enough in the first 2 3 quarters of the first half, but that final touchdown drive was the straw that broke the camel's back, and then he changed in the next timeout. Maybe It's possible. I've been told that. Nobody's told me that. I asked somebody that would kind of, know, and I was told that no, the structure of the defense is going to be the same, was the same. And honestly, what would make me happier is that Chris Ash was pissed off about what he saw in the end of the first half, and he got pissed and started heating him up a little bit. That's my hope, because he's the defensive coordinator. My hope is that Chris Ash looked in the mirror and said, dude, what the heck am I doing? Let's just get back to playing fast and to going after this team. I've overthought it way too much. Let's just go after these guys. I hope that's what happened. I just don't know. I think part of it's just situational football. You're up 26 points, and now you're not afraid of getting beat. Now you want to heat them up. Now you want to go after them. That's what I think it was.
From Josh Buffo, with this season's offense, if we had last season's defense, are we national championship favorites? If yes or no, why? Love the IB Nation.
Oh my gosh, yes. Josh, absolutely. If they had last year's defense, Miami doesn't get to, I don't think, 20 points in that game. They'd have heated Carson Beck up and ate him alive. The A&M would have scored in the 20s, but it would have been like a 40-something to 20-something game, in my opinion. And Purdue wouldn't have, I don't know, that Purdue gets to double figures in that game. With how bad that offensive line was, their offensive line this year might be worse than their offensive line was last year. Their defense does not have the talent they had last year. That's the craziest thing. Their defense last year was way more talented than the defense they have this year. But they play better because they're coached way better. And they play harder. But, could you imagine Purdue this year if they had Dylan Theineman and Cole Brevard and Will Helt this year? Dude, that's a team to worry about. Being a bowl team. But, man, if they had last year's defense, if this team with this offense was giving up 15 points a game, are you kidding me? Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we're talking about last year's defense, they also have Riley Mills back and Xavier Watts back and Jack Kaiser back, and we're having a different conversation in that regard also. But even if it was just last year's effectiveness with the current team, I could see that. I could see this team, we said before the season draft, they're going to give up more points, but we thought it was going to be like 18, 19, because we said they're playing a lot better offenses this year than last year. But they still should have been a top 10 defense, top 15 at worst. Not this. Not this.
No. Corey Ruth, are the defensive struggles more schematic, and will things just snap into place one of these games, or is there a fundamental problem like youth in key positions?
Nah, as I said, that's why I'm tired of the blaming of the youth. What key positions is Notre Dame young on defense? What key positions? They're literally older at cornerback now than they were last year. Benjamin Morrison got hurt in game 6. From game 7 on, they played a true sophomore and a true freshman at cornerback. Now they're playing a true junior and a true freshman at cornerback. What key position are we talking about? They're older at linebacker. So last year, your D tackles were 6-year senior and a 5th-year senior. This year, your D tackles are a 5th-year senior and a senior. They're not young. You played a freshman at nickel. That was the best performance we've seen from a nickel all season. So I think people are looking for justifications for, and I'm not saying you, Corey, I'm just saying this has been a thing that I've debated a lot. Sometimes the answer is the simplest one, and it's not that your players somehow got worse. It's not that somehow Xavier Watts was so good. Again, remember, this is coming from, there was no bigger proponent of Xavier Watts than me. I ranked him as a top 100 recruit coming out of high school. I was pissed when they didn't play him on offense. I was ecstatic when he was given a chance on defense. I've said he's the best safety at Notre Dame of my lifetime. But even that type of player does not cause you to go from being the best pass defense in college football, at worst top 5, to one of the worst pass defenses in college football. Losing him doesn't do that. Ohio State lost their top coordinator. Where do they have young players? They don't have young players at Mike. That's your defensive captain. You know, like the Notre Dame offense is a redshirt freshman at quarterback. That hasn't hurt him. But we're supposed to believe, according to some, and again, Corey, I'm not. I think Corey is positing potential options here. I'm not saying he's advocating for that. There are, though, people advocating for that because there's Marcus Freeman's the same as Brian Kelly in that there are certain groups of fans that when he's your coach, you will defend him no matter what. You will blame anybody else, including the players, before you'll blame the football coach and his mistakes. And make any excuse. That's what Brian Kelly made a living of, and his supporters made a living of. Well, it's just we're getting into the we'll wait till next year mode because you're too young at this spot, that spot, whatever spot on this year's team. That's what we're getting into. And I despise that. I absolutely despise that. And if you're someone who wants to be like, well, you know, then fine. I just don't want to hear it. You're an excuse maker. This is the same crap that people piss and moaned about or said during the Brian Kelly era. And I said the same thing then. This is excuse making. This is cop-outs. This is making excuses for a guy that makes a whole lot of money and it's to do a job that doesn't do the job, and then we justify him not doing the job. And it drives me nuts. And it's cowardice. It's cultish, and all of it I can't stand. And again, Corey, this isn't coming at you because I think you're which of these two options you're on. I don't know which one you're on. This is simple. It is a philosophical problem that goes even beyond schematic. Because as I've said, you can win with zone defense. You could be a great zone defensive football team. It's the philosophy behind an overall lack of aggressiveness that is plaguing this team. It's coaching scared. It's coaching not to get beat. And if you're okay with that, then that's fine, but you're not going to like watching this show, so go watch something else. Go watch somebody that's going to run cover for the football staff every time they do something stupid, which is what there's plenty of people like that. There's plenty of shows that did that during the Brian Kelly era. We don't do that. I adore Marcus Freeman. I think the world of Marcus Freeman and what he's done in Notre Dame, but my job is not to be Marcus Freeman's hype man. My job is to give honest assessment to you. And you don't have to agree with it, but what I can't stand is when people start running cover, because then when you run cover for the head football coach, now we're back to blaming the players. Well, you got a freshman corner. Notre Dame has played a freshman corner in key moments every year of the last 3 years. Notre Dame went to the freaking title game or college football playoff in 2020 with Clarence Lewis as a freshman at cornerback. Clarence Lewis. But we're supposed to believe that Mark Zachary is not good enough to beat Texas A&M and Miami? And by the way, Mark Zachary didn't play but one snap in those games. But Clarence Lewis, we can go to the title, to the playoff with. Clarence Lewis, we can go play for the ACC title with. Clarence Lewis, we can shut down North Carolina's high-octane offense. But we can't with Mark Zachary and Dallas Golden and Tay Johnson? Really? So it goes back to Chris Ash came in, broke what was fixed, and said, yeah, I know this worked for you guys, but we're going to completely go away from the entire philosophy. And as I've said, this is not man versus zone. This is soft versus aggressive. This is soft versus attacking. This is fundamentals versus no fundamentals. That's what this is. And that's now putting the players in position to where they can't play to their full potential. And that's the problem. And that's where the players have to do a better job. Yes, but they're not the problem. The man at the top is of the defense. And then it's up to the head coach, the man above him, to say, hey, man, this isn't acceptable. And that's why I think this game is going to be so important for Marcus Freeman. If Marcus Freeman fixes this, we're going to look back and be like, that's a guy in control of his football team. Yeah, he made a mistake hiring a coordinator. What am I going to say to that, Trev? What am I going to say about Marcus Freeman hiring making a bad defense coordinator? Am I going to be like, see, this is why he's not meant to be a head coach. This is a young guy. He's too young. Am I going to say that, Trev? No. You know what my answer is. What have I said a million times about my response to Marcus Freeman making a bad hire? What am I going to say, Trev?
Yes, every coach has made a bad hire.
Everyone. Urban Meyer thought that Tim Beck and Ed Warner could run an offense together, and it failed, and it lasted 1 year. They went undefeated with Everett Withers at D coordinator, and he took the James Madison job. You and I both know that he took that job because he wasn't coming back to Ohio State. You know, like Nick Saban's made bad coordinator hires. On defense, on his side of the ball, he's made bad coordinator hires. Every coach makes bad hires. The question is, what do you do about it? And you can't wait till the end of the season. So I'm good with it. I'm good with it. So let's see what he does.
Agreed. We see that the same.
Got another super chat down here.
From Tyler Evans, appreciate the super chat. What's a better job, Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech, or UCLA? They feel like they are all behind in NIL.
Yeah, I think what's the better job? I'd probably say Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
UCLA has the most resources from a talent pool standpoint, but they're always going to be a basketball school. They just are. They're not gonna be a team that is gonna go out and just commit to football the way that you need to.
Yeah.
I don't know that Virginia Tech will either, but I think they'll do enough to support the team, in my opinion. I think Oklahoma State's in a tough spot. I don't know how well they're going to do. I think Virginia Tech would probably be the best bet. Now, if UCLA committed to supporting football, then that's probably the best job. I don't think they're ever going to do that. They never have done that.
Nope.
Yep.
From Tristan Schaub, up to this point in the season, outside of Jeremiah Love, who has the best draft stock? I mean, probably Malachi Fields. I mean, NFL GM salivate at the fact of at the sight of a 6'4", 220-pound wide receiver that can beat defenses over the top, win contested catches. I'd probably say him. If Eli Raridan puts together another good performance, I'd say him. He's a 6'7", 250-pound vertical tight end.
Up to this point of the season, yeah. He's been pretty good. Because the one game he didn't perform in the pass game, he blocked his tail off.
Yeah.
Like teams are going to value that. Ooh, this guy can make an impact even when he's not getting the football.
And he's also getting the benefit of being a Notre Dame tight end.
Yeah.
I mean, they've just strung together basically a drafted tight end every season that you can have. So, I mean,
I'll tell you the guy who I think's draft stock is skyrocketing right now. I'm not a draft guy. This is an assumption. I'll bet you people are looking around college football and be like, dude, that number 24 for Notre Dame is one of the best backs in college football. And I think Malachi Fields averaging 20 yards a catch through 3 games is also getting noticed. Yeah. He's won already, 3 contested, like really tight contested catches.
Yep.
He's made clutch plays on third down. He's taken the top off the defense. I think Malachi is a guy that is I think I would be willing to bet his draft stock's going up as well. But I like the Eli one too. I think he's starting to get on people's radar. But I bet you DeJarian Price is a guy that there's a lot of NFL scouts are like, let me go watch this kid for Notre Dame. He tore up Purdue. Let me go back and watch his first 2 games. Wait a minute, what? He was ripping off against Miami and A&M as well? This kid's natural.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm not Lambert's not in the conversation. Leonard Moore's not in the conversation because they're not draft prospects. They're not draftable prospects. They can't go to the draft if they wanted to. They're sophomores.
Christopher Hardy, what do you think about how the defensive tackles have been utilized this season so far?
I'm fine with it. I thought that some of the stunts that they did against Purdue early in the game were poorly executed. But when they started executing them more effectively with the vertical push and then the tight loops, I thought they were a lot more effective. I think the D tackles outside of the first quarter and a half of the Miami game have been used well.
Yeah.
Like there's this constant talk about it. D tackles aren't very good. And I'm like, what game are you watching? Like maybe they won't be good against Arkansas. Maybe they won't be good against USC and NC State. I don't know. I can't predict the future. But when I watch film of the first 3 games, outside of the first half against Miami, I've had no complaints with the performance of the D tackles or how they've been used. I don't like how the ends are always used. I don't like how the linebackers are used. I don't like how the secondary is used, but I don't have a lot of problems with how the D tackles are used. It's part of the reason Notre Dame's been pretty good stopping the run so far this year. Gabriel Ruby had 3 pressures against Purdue. Jared Dawson was pretty good getting after the quarterback against Miami. I just don't have a big problem with how the defenses are being used so far this year. Defensive tackles, are being used so far this year.
I agree. Yeah, outside of the usage of Donovan Heinisch in the first half of the Miami game, I've been pleased with what the defensive tackles have done so far this year.
And then here's the last question that we have.
From Sad Tigers fan, where do you think CJ Carr ranks in terms of quarterbacks nationally?
I don't know. It's a little early for that. I mean, here's what I'll tell you. I'll tell you exactly where he ranks right now. They passing right now, quarterback rating. CJ Carr right now ranks 19th in quarterback rating. And if you look at quarterback rating against Power 5 teams, he's 15th. And if you look at Power 5 rate, if you look at it amongst only Power 5 quarterbacks, he would go up 2 more spots. So that's kind of where that's where CJ's at right now. CJ Carr also ranks 15th in quarterback rating against ranked teams. And he's one of only 2 quarterbacks that have played a ranked opponent, Lenore Sellers being the other, in the top 15. So everybody else is building theirs off of 1 game. So, yeah. I think
there we go.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
CJ Carr also this year ranks 10th in the country in yards per pass attempt. This season, he ranks 9th in the country in yards per pass attempt against FBS opponents. So if you take out games against FCS teams. So if you look at games just against other Power 5 teams, so against Power 5 opponents, he's 6th in college football in yards per pass attempt. So yeah, he's doing pretty well so far.
Kid's dealing.
Pretty well so far. Yeah, he is. He definitely is. Yeah, he's averaging 10 yards per pass attempt against Power 5 teams. I think he's averaging 10 yards an attempt through the season. And it's not just because of the Purdue game. That helped. He was at 9.2 against Texas A&M. So he's been pretty good there the last 2 games. But going 18.6 per attempt against Purdue is a pretty good day of work.
Yeah.
Pretty good day of work.
Yeah, that's pretty decent.
When was the last time? Let me actually go find this. I'm curious about this, Trev. When was the last time Notre Dame, as a pass offense, they were 14.1 in that game? When was the last time they were higher than that? 14.1 per attempt. Let's see here. Nope. Okay, last time they had a higher yards per attempt average, you've got to go back as a team. You've got to go back to 2019
against New Mexico.
New Mexico, yeah. They had a 16.1 yards per attempt average. But the difference is in that game, that was driven by the backup quarterback. So Ian Book averaged 15 yards per attempt in that game, but Phil Jurkovic averaged 26 yards per attempt in that game. And then I think Brendan Clark also went 1 for 1 for a 22-yard gain. So your backup quarterbacks averaged over 20 yards on 3 attempts, which boosted above 16. CJ's number was over 3 yards higher than what Ian Book's number was in that game. And then, the last time they were over 13 prior to this was Syracuse back in 2016. So you got to go all the way back to 2019 to get anywhere close to the 14.1 that Notre Dame was. Last year, the highest number was 10.5 against Army. It's the only time they were over 10. The year before that, they went 12.2 against Oregon State and 12.2 against Central Michigan. So still like 2 yards lower. 12.8 against Navy in 2022. And then 12.2 against USC that year. Highest number in 2021 was 11.6 against Georgia Tech. And then the year before that, the highest number was 10.1 in 2020 against Boston College. In 2009, the highest number was, as I mentioned, 16.1. Ian Book The offense also went 13.9 against Navy. I'll bet you Ian had a higher number that game. Hold on a second. Yeah, Ian was 14.2 against Navy. So the backup quarterback dragged that one down a little bit. So it just kind of puts into perspective how good that performance was. And let's be honest, they've played some bad teams between then and 19. So to have that kind of performance, yes, you were playing a bad team, but you also threw the ball incredibly well against that bad team. And your receivers are talented. So it was fun to watch.
Sure was. Sure was. Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it here for us today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Brian and I will be back tomorrow to go over keys to victory. We're going to give our game predictions, and we're also going to talk some game records and preview some other games across college football. Tonight at 6 p.m. or 5 p.m., excuse me, IB Nation Sports Beat's going live. Part 1, you're getting Jesse Stiers. Go through their midweek mailbag. Part 2, you're getting me. Vince is still recovering, so I'm hopping in for a little bit of rapid fire, a little bit of midweek mailbag, so should be fun. But as always, best way to support what we do here, make sure you subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. On your way out of here, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Whichever streaming platform you listen to us on, we greatly appreciate a 5-star review. So, till next time, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.